If Barry can make it, we think he's out of town, and several others have reported they will not be here. So with that in mind, I think it's time to begin, and we'll start with education. Mr. Kern.
All righty, thank you very much. We'll have the Education Committee meeting come to order, and I will pass it off. It looks like first item is Dr. Link.
Thank you, Mr. Kern. As you may recall, during last month's monthly board meeting, the approval of kind of a committee restructuring was approved. A new committee being added is the curriculum committee. Administration is proposing that curriculum committee, first the purpose of it be, staying on top of the curriculum renewal cycle. So where are we with the work as it comes to updating curriculum on a continuous basis? Curriculum recommendations, which would most likely be driven by Curriculum Council, which is more of an internal, inward-facing group within the district, and then to report out on their work and their recommendations much more publicly facing with the newly formed Curriculum Committee, so to the committee, to the board, and also to the public. Also to consider things like any sort of state requirements, for example, the steel standards coming through. Those are things that we could also discuss in the Curriculum Committee, as well as any potential budgetary implications. Curriculum leaders are, Mrs. Snyder has been assigned as the chair, thank you, and Mr. Kern as the co-chair, also thank you, sir. And our administrative liaison would be the Director of Educational Technology, Curriculum, and Instruction, Mr. Pine. We administratively, we kind of went through probably 3 or 4 different scenarios on the frequency of the committee, and like the timing of each meeting. And we kept coming back to 3 times a year, having the curriculum committee meet, being October, so shortly after the school year starts, January, as we're looking at things like course selection guide approval and interconnectedness to that, and then in April, if there's any sort of curriculum purchasing recommendations coming out of the committee, because that would fall in line with our budgetary timelines if we needed to make any sort of new curriculum purchases going into the new budget cycle. And we are also recommending that in October, January, and April, the policy committee does not meet, thanks to people like Dr. Stoker and my administrative support, Mrs. Nemi, and her administrative report, Mrs. Steckel. We are actually caught up with policy, which is a rare occasion in a public school district. So we think that if we back off 3 times a year, that we'll still be in a good place moving forward with the policy. So we're recommending not to have policy meeting those evenings that we would do curriculum committee. So that being said, I will open it up to this committee here to see if they're comfortable with those that plan.
I'm comfortable with it. What is the connection between education and curriculum and having them separate versus kind of in a way how we do them today, where the curriculum is part of education and we have our curriculum council that then reports out? What would the difference in having this committee drive?
It's a good question. I would propose that this is going to be strictly curriculum and things that we would traditionally cover that are curriculum related in education, we hold for those committees unless it's imminent, like we have to make an immediate decision. There's not that often that there's a curriculum emergency, but there may be something that comes up that we need to have a decision in a timely manner, and then at that point we would default back to education. But really the goal is to keep all things in a curriculum realm in a curriculum committee.
Sounds good. And that'll include all departments of the curriculum, including our special ed departments and things like that within curriculum? All encompassing.
Everything from the core content areas to the electives to things like ELTP and things like special education. So anything that has a curriculum component that would need to be addressed, we would bring to the curriculum committee.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay?
Thank you. There's no action that needs to be taken on that, just looking for feedback. Thank you. Up next, I would like to share out the proposed 24-25 district calendar, and Dr. Stoker is also putting it up on the screen as well. So this calendar, for all intents and purposes, follows what we've done this year with, the timing of holidays. You'll see that in August 5th through the 8th, those are new teacher orientation days. There's 4 of them listed there, but the most that any teacher anywhere in the new teacher orientation cycle would have to attend is 3. But we're also coinciding it with when the IU offers their new teacher orientation. So for example, a first-year teacher would have to do 3 days. A second-year teacher would have to do 2 days, and so on. They may not always necessarily fall within the 3 same-day window. Okay? And then there will also continue to be 3 Act 80 days. Those are like the kind of orangish, brownish colors. Those are the days where we focus on data review, data analysis, and then using that data to help us make curriculum and instructional and assessment decisions. We've done that this year. This is the first time that we're doing it this school year, and we would like to recommend that we continue having those 3 days built in. Those days are days that the state allows for us to count as, so we would not have to make those days up. We do not have to extend the year. The school code says we can use those days and count them as student days, even though the students are not technically in the building. Okay? You will see also on this calendar June 19th. That is a new day, a new proposed, well, not a newly proposed holiday, but a holiday that we are newly proposing to include in the calendar. That holiday is a federally recognized holiday, and it is a state, what a state would consider, our state, Pennsylvania, the Commonwealth, would consider almost like a floating holiday. That is Juneteenth. Okay, that is the day that commemorates and recognizes the end of slavery in the United States. Over half of the districts in the county are either currently doing it or are going to include it in their 24-25 school year calendar. I am recommending, administratively, we are recommending that we include that in our calendar. I think that sends a strong message to our diversifying population that truly is an important date to recognize. So, we are proposing that we add that date into our calendar as a holiday, which means that any employee that works in the summer on that day would not have to report. It would not be one less instructional day unless for some reason we would have to extend our school year into what is, almost through the 3rd week in June next year. Which is unlikely, but I just need to put that caveat out there that if we have some sort of crazy, winter or a building failure or something like that, that is probably the only scenario that we would have to extend our school year that long. So that's an area right there that I'm looking to the committee to see if the committee will support the calendar going to the monthly board meeting this month with the inclusion of Juneteenth on the calendar.
Can I just get some clarification on the June 19th? A summer employee working that day, is that like a definite day off for them, or is it part of like the ones they can select?
It is not. It would be a day off. We would close the district.
So the district will be closed for that day?
Correct. And then keep in mind, well, except for whichever employee in the maintenance department that does their building checks like we do on those holidays.
Right.
Keep in mind by that month, and I'm sorry, Mrs. Snyder, I'm not shaking my
That's
finger at you,
okay,
I'm
yeah.
trying to point behind you. That month, that week of that month, we will be into our 4-day work week. So that particular week would be a Thursday off, Friday off, and then the weekend.
So in essence, these are union contracts, and we're really adding another holiday to the contract for those people?
And any other employee that's here in the summer, that's working.
Do we need to kind of affirm that with them, get an MOU or anything like that, that it's another, giving them a holiday?
Well, it would be a paid holiday.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
understand that, yeah.
I'm happy to go have that conversation with them, but as long as they are receiving their required number of workdays a year, in other words, we're not shorting them.
No, I don't think they were, but
Yeah,
you're actually giving them a free
you-
day. is
Yeah,
what you're
and
doing.
the
Yeah.
board, it's under the board's purview to approve the calendar. There's no contract violation, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
No, I didn't think it would be a violation, but the fact that we're recognizing it, I would say, hey, thank you very much, you know, you gave us a holiday or something, but whatever. You don't have to.
Can I just clarify? I don't think,
What's that?
I don't think we're getting it's a paid holiday, but we still have to work the same
No,
amount of
you
contractual
guys
days.
are off. It doesn't affect the teachers. It just affects like the maintenance custodial.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That would be there, because it's the middle of June,
All
so.
right, just want to clarify.
It only affects people
Okay.
working on that day in the
People working
summer.
out there,
Just
yeah.
want to clarify.
I mean, you can donate a holiday if you want to come to
Have July 4th.
Yeah, I'm okay with it, so.
I just have a question on the snow days, and I apologize because I probably didn't pay attention all that well. The snow days, so we've done quite a few virtual days this year.
Yes, we've done
There's-
4 this year.
And those are, how are they integrated into the calendar? Because if I see this now, I'm seeing that there's days built in that are snow days.
Yep.
Just
So-
connecting the dots
sure.
on
So,
that.
it's a good question. So this year, we've used 4 flexible instructional days, virtual days. Those count as an instructional day, so no days lost. We are allowed to use 1 more this school year. If we get to 6, then we fall into the snow makeup days as listed there. So even if we exhausted all of those, we would go through, well, this is for next year, but even if we exhausted all of those, we would go through,
December 13th, are you looking for the date?
how late we would go.
June 17th?
Yeah.
Yeah, into the end of the year, yeah.
Right.
So the 17th.
I'm just trying to get that wrapped around. If we add the June 19th and we get to the 17th, what occurs if we do this, and trying to connect the dots, that's all.
And again, it's, a very slim possibility that everybody would be here on the 19th of June. But unlikely.
Mr. Link, I have a question. So we've done the instructional days during the snow this particular year. Is that always the plan, or does it depend on what the weather situation is?
So so if you read Terry Arter's article,
I didn't actually.
I'm teasing.
Oh, okay.
Just because he just asked this question last week, I think.
Oh, okay.
So kind of front of mind for everyone. If,
I'm thinking of what's happening out west.
sure, so if we're gonna get a snowstorm, right, and it looks like something that we are not going to, lose power for extended periods of time. We're not talking about a foot of snow, 15 inches of snow. We're gonna start with a flexible instructional day. However, if we're getting predictions, consistent predictions leading up to a storm, where it's predicting, a foot plus, a blizzard, we're gonna start with a traditional day, knowing that it's a safety issue. At that point, people are gonna be wanting to take care of their homes, their property. Students may actually have to be helping with their parents to clear walkways and sidewalks and stuff like that. We have not had a storm like that in quite a while, and actually we've been quite lucky because our storms have been falling like on weekends. So that has helped out. However, in the not so distant past, we had that Valentine's Day storm, which was I think 24 inches. That, we're shutting down if something like that comes. That being said, if we wake up at, a particular morning where we had already said we're going to have a flexible instructional day, and we wake up and it's clear that nobody has power or anything like that, well, then we would just switch to a traditional day.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was still
Yeah.
an option depending
Yes.
on the weather situation.
It is.
Okay, thank you.
We've been fairly fortunate. Actually, this is probably the worst winter that we've had in
In years.
maybe 3 years, 4 years. So
Okay, thanks.
it's a good question. Okay, so I don't think I'm hearing any opposition to that proposed calendar.
Just one question. So the week of the 16th to the 20th starts our flexible summer hours?
It could potentially be the week of the 9th. The week of the 9th. Oh, that's next year. Yeah. Yep, you're right. Yes.
Okay, so then going to that paid holiday would actually be more than just a paid holiday because they work 10 hours a day, correct? On Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then supposedly Thursday. So you understand what I'm saying? It's not just a day, it's a day plus 2 hours.
Correct, but
Okay.
mathematically you are correct. However, the board has approved in their contract that during the summer work days, that it would be a day for a day. So in other words, they're working 10 hours, it would be considered a day.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that we're not,
Yep.
I'm going back to the contract, and I'm not worried about the day, that's fine. But more so, how does it affect us, with our negotiated contract, that's all.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you for that conversation, and you'll see this calendar again on Monday evening's board agenda for consideration and hopefully approval.
Okay. All right, Dr.
right.
Stoker.
Thank you. Our
Mr.
next
Pine.
one is the annual data presentation debrief. So our administrative team presented the 22-23 annual data presentation back in January. And at that time, we asked if the public or anyone had any questions, regarding that presentation. We received some questions, took those questions into consideration, and formulated some responses to those questions to try to be as thorough as we could. So we are back now at, Education Committee again in March to respond to those questions.
Okay,
You're
that's me first. So is there a report that makes it easy to follow a cohort of students from year to year? The answer is yes. It's actually, the Ed Insight offers a very easy, very quick report. In order to be able to see that, we can look up any group of students, any group of time based on subgroup, individual grade level. Maybe a click to the next slide there. This is just very quickly, I put this into a spreadsheet. I just kind of pulled out cohorts of students by class. So down at the bottom, class of 24 is our current seniors. All the way back down to our current fourth graders. And then if you look left to right, you'll be able to see how those students have performed, in this case in reading, across from one year to the next. Those red blocks in there stairwelling down, that is our COVID year where we don't have any data points. So we do have the ability to pull all that. We do take a look at that. Obviously the COVID year, I mean, you can see it did have a dramatic impact from one with each group as it went through.
Question 2, did 0% of the students pass the Algebra 1 Keystone this spring? And how did final classroom grades compare for those trigger courses? So for 22-23 school year, we kind of broke down what that looked like across anyone who tested in Algebra 1. So high school winter, we had 25 out of 100 students, or 25% of that population that scored proficient or advanced on the Algebra 1 Keystone. In the middle school that spring, we had 29 students out of 38, so there was 76% of that population that scored proficient or advanced in the Algebra 1 Keystone. And then the high school spring, we had 0 out of 19, which was 0%. So if we added all those together, we had about 34% of our students that scored proficient or advanced that sat for the exam 22-23. Now, it's important to note that that's not how the state actually measures that. So when we look at the Future Ready PA Index, they report only on the 11th grade cohort of students. So for 22-23, that cohort of students reported out at 25.4% of the students that were proficient or advanced. Now, it is really important to discuss the non-numeric proficiency scores. So back when we had the pandemic and students didn't have to test in 2020, what happened is they gave any student who was in an Algebra 1 trigger course, so somebody that was in Algebra 1 that would have sat for that Keystone exam for the first time, a non-numeric proficient. So those students are working their way through the system. Many of those students were in 8th grade at the time, some were 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade. So some of those have kind of progressed through the system and those students are gone at this point. However, we have that big group of 8th grade that would have sat for the exam but did not because of the pandemic. So we had 26 additional students that if we looked at their grades, like they were proficient, advanced in biology, they were proficient or advanced in literature, they tend to be proficient or advanced on the Algebra 1 Keystone as well. So we had about 26 students who fell into that category, had a high likelihood of also being proficient or advanced on Algebra 1. So if we took that number along with that 25.4%, assume we have about 100 kids, we would have been closer to 50% of our students being proficient or advanced in the Algebra 1 Keystone for that 11th grade cohort. So I just want to show you how important it is to look at those students and then know the impact that that's kind of making its way through the system. And then just Ed Insight does provide course and grades, PSSA and course grade 2 Keystone alignment reports as well. And that can help us to guide through that analysis of, you know, are our students doing well in the courses and on the assessment or vice versa. Okay, the next question was, what is the process to analyze data once received? So the way that the state reports out the data long before we see the Future Ready PA Index is they start to, as soon as students test, they release those results as spreadsheets. So for instance, all of our students who tested in the Winter Keystone, actually tomorrow is the date that we should get that report. Typically what I do is I go into the DRC, I download that spreadsheet. It's a spreadsheet with a lot of cells in there that you know, we don't necessarily need to have, but it's demographic information and things of that nature. I condense that down, I summarize the data to say how many of our students are below basic, proficient, or advanced. I categorize it by literature, Algebra 1, and biology, and then I send that out to the entire administrative team. So everybody across the district as an admin knows what that looks like. Then from there, we drill down. So administrators use the 3 new data days that we have. They use in-services, faculty meetings, data team meetings, or other strategic times that they have to conduct data dives. Last summer, our admin team sat down and spent a great deal of time developing a protocol to use for the data. So we practiced using that, and then our principals have been using that with their teams in the buildings. It's not completely uniform across the district. There is some flexibility within that so that they can prioritize the data that they need to look at for their buildings, or, you know, the way in which they dive into that may look a little bit different. But in general, everyone is doing the data dive like that. And I'll just give you the timeline. So like I said, tomorrow the Winter Keystones will be available. In June is when the PSSA data is available. July is when the spring Keystones become available. And then August is when the accountability becomes available. And accountability, we may have a student who tests either in another district or for us, but they have to be here in a certain time frame in order for that data to count for us, because it just means that we have that instructional responsibility for the student. So even though a score may be reported to us, it doesn't mean that that student counted for us. So that's when that file is most important, is when it comes down to the accountability and if that student's going to count for us as well. I will add that as part of our next round of comprehensive planning, we are going to be articulating our MTSS systems. So we're going to dive into academics, behavior, and mental health in each of our schools, tier 1, 2, and 3, just to really describe what that looks like across the district, what interventions we use, what resources are available, so that's articulated for everyone to know about.
So Canvas use, the best way I'd explain this is on varying levels based on varying access to other resources. As you'll see here in Math in LA, a lot of times, so I answer this a couple of ways, right? A lot of times we addressed, deficits or areas of need in subsequent courses, right? So for Algebra 1, sometimes in the subsequent Algebra 2 course, we're now using in Canvas and through IXL modules or lessons in order to address gaps, areas where students need to have gaps filled. In other areas where we don't have strong tools like IXL, like biology, the teachers have generated courses that have kind of outlined instructional material as well as additional assessment material through tools like Pear Deck, Edpuzzle, and things like that that would allow for additional practice on respective eligible content. So a lot of times these are assigned now in response to course grades aligned to the eligible content as well as to CBT outcomes. Now that we're doing the CBT at the high school as well. In Math in the LA, there's been a big lean into IXL because IXL provides not only standards aligned instructional support. I'm not going to call it instruction. Those of us who have used these tools we know what they are. They're meant to support and provide some additional access to material and instructional resource to students, but then really what they provide is practice, and they provide ongoing sort of data points for teachers in order to assess student progress as they move throughout the course of the year. The nice thing about IXL, and I think the reason we've leaned into it, is that it really does provide individual student pathways in terms of where they are and what their individual needs are based on those assessments, as well as the teacher's ability to provide, assign materials that are directly aligned to the grade level content standards. So Canvas, yes, but we are continuing to grow that. As we grow curriculum, we're looking to make sure that we are getting those model courses together. Again, that's probably the last stage in there. Right now we're working on finalizing the assessment piece after the design piece, and then we'll really get down to the core of instructional design. That's the last piece. Staff at one grade level to the next in regards to how students have had specific standards and issues addressed. So there's possibility here within Ed Insight, all the teachers, the administration, we're continuing to grow within our understanding and our capacity to use Ed Insight as a data warehouse and tool. But it does provide quick looks and documents that facilitate some of those discussions. In the meantime, recognizing that we are still growing within that, we are working on, I don't even know how to describe this. It's basically a document that I've sort of designed that will have cover pages and then for each grade level tabs within it, and then sort of all of the resources in a drive behind that linked in so that any administrator would be able to look and see the entire course sequence and all of the things that are taught throughout the course of a student's career as a science student at Northern Lehigh. Then if they go to the grade level tab with more depth, be able to see a map of how everything is covered throughout the course of the year, and then have linked within there state documents that are relevant, curricular documents that are relevant, assessment documents that are relevant, all in sort of a one-stop shop area that will be a catalog around which people will be able to talk about those kinds of things. And Insight's still going to be pivotal because it's going to have a data piece that's not going to have. That's going to be a curricular resource, which Ed Insight has, but the data piece I think is really going to end up coming down to teachers being able to have those conversations. And again, to some extent, that breaks down, that becomes very challenging from grade level to grade level, which is why I do think that the next step in what we've been working on, I know Slatington's been working on it, and with Peters, is using some of the intervention systems and the intervention communication tools within Ed Insight in order to make sure that as we are using interventions with students, we're documenting those in there, and then that record follows along so that all the things that we are doing with kids from year to year are maintained basically in a database, in a system where we'll be able to review it. Middle school and high school has been working a lot this year in collaborative sessions between content areas, something that's been lacking and has been a really real struggle up until recently in order to work together on curriculum and assessment design. And then from there, in the design of those curriculum and those common assessments, using those as what I often call like the campfire around which people can gather, the hearth around which they can gather, and they can talk about practice and talk about student outcomes. And IXL again is serving as that. I think that as IXL has become, again, that hearth, as I call it, and I often tell people, and don't shoot me for saying this, I don't care if it's IXL for the most part. I think that we need good common data points around which to talk and get professionals collaborating, right? And that's what this is all about. And so IXL is it for us, right? We've decided that that is our formative assessment tool. That's the communication piece that we're going to be able to gather our professionals around. And so we're currently looking at getting that extended down even as second grade, so that way we can bridge that communication gap with Peters as well, all the way up through all of our grades that are part of the accountability system. So yes, but not to the level that we really want it to be yet. I think we have a lot of those systems and those pieces in place, but that will continue to grow.
Okay, question 6. Are universal grading procedures in place for schools? So the answer to this is yes and no. No, it's not K-12, but yes, it has been done by administration in pockets, resulting in conversations to better measure what we value and value what we measure. This is an area in which work remains, and we're looking at that across content areas, across schools, so there is work to be done there. And again, just to reiterate that Ed Insight does provide that course grade for PSSA and course grade for Keystone Alignment Report that we can look at for some of that as well.
So common assessment used in Algebra 1 regardless of grade level. So commonality in Algebra 1, and I know we've talked about this, I think, before, and it's been a bit of a process to get us to where I think we are now and where we'll be moving into the 24-25 school year, which is with universal agreement about what Algebra 1 means, right, and what it means for our students. So within the next couple of months, beginning really next week, is I think a real intersectional point between like all of the talk and taking action and steps towards it. We're currently documenting common assessments that are now ensuring that there's a sense of validity and alignment to the standards. And what that's going to look like, just kind of quick overview, is the teachers are going to determine based on eligible content that assessment items align. We're going to then validate all of that. We'll have sheets that will identify what eligible content each item aligns to, ensuring we have enough items for each eligible content in order to be able to say something. If we have one item on there that's not eligible content and the kid doesn't get it right, we can't say the kid doesn't know it. He could have just guessed badly, or he could have had a bad sandwich for lunch. If it's 3 items, right, and then now we have a sense of like, all right, they got all 3 wrong, something's not right here. So that's the type of work that we're doing right now in finalizing common assessments. As far as Algebra 1 in particular goes, this has been a bit of a difficulty, and I think it's been some updates, I think we've talked about it a little bit in the past, but there's been some interesting sequencing in terms of the way that Algebra 1 has played out, and we now have that down to a point where there are basically 3 tracks, don't love that word, but tracks for students. One is the one that we commonly know, which is generally successful, right? That is the 8th grade Algebra 1 students, those students who go into Algebra 1. There's work to do there, and we're going to do that on the other end too, in terms of making sure that they get the standards for the 8th grade PSSA, which is a struggle right now, and I think it's going to take some curricular work that we have plans in the making for. But that's one, right? So that takes anywhere from 30 to 40 students generally off the plate, right? Because they generally are proficient or advanced. Then we have to address the ones who are not, but then the rest of the student body, there's a portion, which is probably approximately another third of the students, who will go into a 1-semester Algebra 1 course during their freshman year. And then the remainder of the students will go into a 2-semester block Algebra 1 course. Research does show that there is a portion of students, and it's generally in that bottom 30 to 50% in terms of math proficiency, that benefit from a full year of algebra, from a doubling up of algebra courses, and all of those will be completed though by the end of 9th grade. So all of our students will have taken the Algebra 1 Keystone, with some exceptions of course, as always, right? All of them will have completed Algebra 1 by the end of freshman year, which is not currently the case. Some students are taking it well into 10th grade. And all of those courses will have one unified curriculum, algebra is algebra, and they will have one set of common assessments across that time. So whether they're taking it for 180 days for 53 minutes, or 90 days for 90 minutes, or 180 days for 90 minutes, that pacing is designed for the teachers and the students to make sure that the students are getting what they need in order to master the content and get to each of those module assessment checkpoints successfully.
Okay, question 8. Are all staff members aware of school-wide concerns, and what are the expectations for incorporation into lessons to address concerns? So at the elementary level, it's somewhat inherent in the structure of scheduling and programming, so you have teams kind of working together. When it get into the secondary buildings, people are more spread out. Sometimes you're getting those department teams together during the day. Sometimes it's not happening during the school day based upon the way that the schedule is. So at the middle school, we do have a new schedule. It incorporates goal team, where the teachers are engaged in literacy and numeracy work with the incorporation of IXL. They're looking at mathematizing the school, so they are looking and drilling down into some of their building data to see where they can make improvements, and those improvements are happening across grade levels, content areas. Middle school and high school are also engaging teachers across grades 7 through 12 in Cornell note-taking. They're also looking at the block. They're looking at writing across the curriculum, focusing on task-oriented writing, text, like what would be similar to what text-dependent analysis is from grades 4 up. I'll also add that, we're looking at the ELA program in the elementary, and, there'll be a lot of conversations being had around ELA and what that's going to look like K to 6.
Sorry, so what student evidence is being collected and reviewed to ensure remedial learning is occurring? So there's kind of a double-edged answer to this right now. So we've been addressing this in a variety of ways. Like I said, in some ways, after the course, subsequent to the course, it's been by embedding that into that subsequent course, right? Algebra 2 for the Algebra 1 Keystone. In the subsequent years, we move through the elementary levels, being aware of those gaps and addressing those in what ways we can with the tools that we've had, whether that be Star Renaissance, the Renaissance Star, or again, now IXL. So if we're looking within the school year as to what evidence is sort of being collected, I think that that's the most frequent, consistent piece of evidence that we have, and the one that's most aligned to the expectations when we start talking about state assessments and standardized type assessments. So IXL, again, just as a reminder, so basically the way that entire system operates is the students take a benchmark, an interim, a diagnostic. They take an assessment, which gives us a general idea of where they are in a variety of subcategory areas. And then from there, the students continue to work on the platform with additional snapshots built in throughout the year, which capture their updated progress. But in that work in between, that formative work, it is continuing to provide the teacher with data and feedback about how students are progressing. So the biggest key with a program like this does tend to be shifting from the tier 1 to sort of the tier 2 mindset within the tier 1 setting, right, within the individual classroom. And I think right now we've been really in a good place, even moving up through the secondary systems and with the Lunch and Learn proposal, kind of developing systems in place that allow for every teacher to have the opportunity to access, understand that student data, understand their progress, both standardized through IXL and through our own professionally designed assessment platforms and assessment options to provide students with the type of individual assistance and learning that they need. So the evidence, the obvious answer is probably something like IXL, which we're very easily monitoring. The long-term answer is something hopefully much more robust and much more aligned to really rich educational outcomes, but that's a whole lot of other extra work that's going to end up coming next. I think right now we've been focusing a lot on alignment to the standardized outcomes.
Okay, and the last question, how is the culture of testing addressed in Northern Lehigh School District? In Northern Lehigh School District schools. So we are focused certainly on students performing at their best, but we really seek to build a culture of learning with accessible pathways for our learners as they write their stories. We see test results as valuable indicators or benchmarks guiding us towards achieving our larger goals. And then we are really focused on what are students going to do after they leave Northern Lehigh. So teaching essential skills through and school-wide positive behavior interventions and supports, encouraging learners to set goals, try their best, be agile, persevere in the face of challenges, and be proud of their accomplishments. I will show you that this is our graduation pathway data. So at the end of every year moving forward, so beginning with the class of 2023 and then moving forward, we need to report to the state which of the pathways each of our students has graduated under. So these are the pathways that we have: Keystone Proficiency, Keystone Composite, CTE Concentrator, Alternative Assessment, Evidence-Based, and then we have students who graduate on special education goals, or we have a superintendent's waiver that can only be given to a certain percentage of our population. So you can see the percentages of students that graduated out of that graduating class in each of those areas. So when you add that together, we have about 32% and about 25% of the students together graduating by passing the Keystones. So about half, a little bit more than half of our students are graduating that way. Then we have our students, we have a large population of our students that goes to LCTI. Most of them end up graduating under the CTE concentrator pathway, so we have another 10 to 11% there. Alternative assessment pathway, we have 16%. We did not have anybody under evidence-based. And then we have about 14% of our students graduating on IEP goals. Our special education population is higher than that on average, but we really do try to push our students to graduate under one of the other pathways, and if they're not able, then they can always graduate on their special education goals. But the state really prioritizes one of the pathways ahead of that. And then certainly we have the superintendent's waiver for students who were not able to graduate under that. For this year, we had 3 students, and that was pandemic factors relating to some inconsistencies in education. Plus, we also had some students move in, I believe 2 at the last minute, that were 12th grade students who did not have to pass Keystones or things like that in our state because they came from a state that did not necessarily have the same assessments. So that's kind of a breakdown of what those graduation pathways look like and where the priority lies now with the new legislation. All right. Any questions, comments? All right, Mr. Hauser, you're up.
Thank you, Dr. Stoker. Good evening, everyone. I wanted to brief the board and the public about a presentation that Mr. Weber and I recently attended with an organization known as INTAG Aquaponics. Dr. Stoker had forwarded a grant opportunity to the middle school administration to kind of look into this and see if it was something that we wanted to explore. Mr. Weber this year, as part of his approach to the gifted program, has relaunched what used to be the middle school greenhouse, where in the back of our cafeteria, it's not like a formal greenhouse, but it definitely has the windows and the glass and things that we can grow in there all year long. And he's done a lot of neat projects with our gifted students, and it does spark a lot of interest in kids, even just in passing as they're walking by from the cafeteria and things. For example, we have a banana tree growing in the middle school, which is just all kinds of cool. Yeah, so that's pretty neat. So we thought that this might be the next evolution of that and extend that greenhouse facility that we have a little more universally across all of our students. So we met with a very nice gentleman named Spencer from out in the center of the state, and he talked to us about agricultural sciences and what we can do to bring that type of learning to our kids. And we were very impressed with it. It falls right in line with the Steele standards and hands-on STEM type of education for our students. You can also, there's like a rise in what's called farm-to-table restaurants. We can do classroom-to-table in this case, as we can grow, a little bit of all kinds of fruits and veggies in here, flowers, all sorts of things. So this is along the lines of hydroponics. I forget the exact difference between aquaponics and hydroponics, Spencer would chastise me for that because I know there's a...
Aquaponics has fish, hydroponics is just plants.
Thank you, Mr. Weber. So if Dr. Stoker, can you scroll up?
Yep.
I think it's the next, that one. So this is the system we're potentially looking at being grant funded at the middle school back in our greenhouse. This is called the E100 system, and it's kind of like a middle of the road in terms of size, you know, and as far as what it'll do, but it'll definitely kind of meet our needs that we could do this for our science classes. It falls right in line, not only with life science in 7th grade, but also with earth and space in 8th grade. And if we do decide to do a curricular revision down the line as we meet the steel standards, I think this just covers the scope and sequence throughout. And then Dr. Stoker, if you would scroll down one more slide, please. And yes, this one is called the Stack, and this is a classroom-specific aquaponics system that could be, you know, at the back of the classroom, used readily for you know, different types of lab activities and things, and the measurements and all that are there. So we are looking to move forward on this. I believe our next step is to bring INTAG to the middle school. They would do a site assessment for us. I will say that I did, as part of that meeting, walk around on FaceTime with kind of a little virtual building tour, and Spencer was very excited to see the middle school courtyard and how that could potentially expand years down the line. If we're successful with some of these smaller units, we could do something a little bit more large scale. But with agricultural sciences and studies, it's not as popular as it once was in Pennsylvania. So this organization is really good at helping us find grant monies that are available to have this funded potentially federally, you know, to help us out with some of the infrastructure here. So we think it's very exciting. It'll be another hands-on opportunity for our students. Mr. Weber, would you like to add anything
Well,
to that?
if you go back to the slide before, one of the things that was impressive was that if you look into the greenhouse behind it, that's really what our greenhouse looks like now too. And we had a discussion with I forget his name, Spencer. And one of the things I pointed out to him was one of the things we're lacking with our greenhouse is ventilation. You know, if you know anything about greenhouses, you need to have airflow, and ours does not. There's no way to control the temperature there. And he got very excited about that, and he said, we could do something about that. And we said, well, we're on a strict budget here. He said, I can find you the funding. So the exciting part is, he said he could find us funding multiple different options. So it sounds like, I'm not promising anything, but it sounds like if we want to do something, he would find us the money. And so it's something we would have to work through. But I mean, that's just an idea, an option. We're talking about starting smaller, but we could work our way up. I mean, if he had his way, he'd have us building a greenhouse out in the courtyard.
Yes. I'll read something from their executive summary sheet that was sent as part of the presentation, that one of their goals is to help schools to cultivate the next generation of critical thinkers, problem solvers, and environmentally conscious individuals by seamlessly integrating science and technology education into the realm of sustainable agriculture. So if there's some sales pitch in there for the product, of course. But one of the things that was stressed in the presentation was that, you know, this is not just go down, look at the plants, turn it on, and use it. This is actually, there are lessons that can be done with problem solving, critical thinking. It is a learning lab. It is an experience for kids. So we would like to pursue this and see what we can do as far as finding the financial support that would be needed through grant opportunities. But I would also welcome any questions from those present tonight.
Anybody?
No, I think it's cool.
That's great.
Yeah, you know what, I know the kids really like to grow the plants and stuff, even in elementary school, they have those
Yeah.
little cups of stuff they'd come home with all excited, you know, when it started to sprout.
Sprout,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay. I think it's terrific. I'll say, hopefully they can find us the funding we need to do what we want.
Great.
So I'm not hearing a specific ask tonight. This was just more of the sharing of potential opportunities. And can we expect you to kind of bring information back as you get it?
Yes, I will reach out to Spencer or another INTAG rep about possibly setting up, I think our next step is kind of a site assessment, you know, and they would come out here and take a look at our facilities to see what would work. I don't see why what's at the middle school would not work. But we'll take a look, and Mr. Weber and I are already working on a questionnaire that was sent to us, which was about kind of the academic merit. So I can bring all of that either to Education Committee, Curriculum Council, you know, after administrative review, and go from there.
One height in the food service possibly.
Sure.
One more possible resource may be the Penn State Lehigh Valley Extension. I know they work heavily with ag programs in schools, so they may have some, at least supporting data for you.
Are we looking at one system? Like
Yes.
that would be one, or are we looking at buying several so more kids can be involved?
So if you look here, this is where the fish would be,
Right.
okay? And the idea is, and this is actually not soil, it's clay walls. So, and the plants grow in that. And the idea with aquaponics compared to hydroponics is the fish poop
Right.
actually fertilizes, goes through the system, fertilizes the plants. Where with hydroponics, you have to put fertilizer in. Right now, we have a hydroponics tower in the greenhouse, and I have to add chemicals every once in a while. Well, you know, the kids learn that you want to do as little as possible with chemicals. So this is all one system here. So it's all tied in.
But I'm talking about our purchase, Tim, are we looking at buying several of those or just one? Obviously, the more systems we have, the more kids that are involved.
So I think the physical size of that, we would fit one into where the cafeteria greenhouse is comfortably.
All right.
And I do, based on the conversation that I had, I do believe that will be enough for classes, because you just, you know, groups of things take turns
Sure.
doing different parts of projects. Dr. Stoker, if you can scroll down to the next slide.
Yeah, I didn't realize how big it was.
Yeah, it's big.
It's hard to see.
This one, you know, this is more designed like just for one classroom. So,
Right.
so we're talking that scale. To me, it looks like a laundry basket. So about that size for a classroom.
Okay.
The others are, I mean, maybe not quite as long as this table, but probably 3/4.
Gotcha.
So they're
Okay.
pretty sizable.
So what do you do with the fish then, when they get bigger?
Sushi. No. I'm joking.
Usually the first fish of choice is tilapia. And tilapia is grown to be eaten.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
I was just curious, because I mean, you gotta do something.
Yeah,
With
that's
her?
all. That's all of.
Get ready.
All of that maintenance will be brought up. I'm not sure if I'll have all of those answers by next meetings, but I can give continual updates. So, well, if we have a sushi bar in June, you know why.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we have the high school master schedule that we're looking to implement in 24-25, and then the lunch and learn proposal. Mr. Haas, can you take that back over?
All right, you ready? Thank you. That should actually say 24-25. So yeah, not right now, but I always follow Mr. Hauser, and he and Mr. Weber are a hard act to follow, so I'll do my best here. But anyway, we are looking at, and we've been doing and have been sharing with you as we look to really refine our schedule for next year to provide maximum opportunities for our kids. So we're going to go through these slides pretty quickly. However, I'll leave it open at the end for sure for questions. And I have Mrs. Crucial here with me, who has been a critical part of this whole process and is an amazing resource as well. So if you could shift that, thank you. So the slides here, and we're going to go through each one of these, but you can see, the key things that we're going to be hitting in this presentation. So our purpose. Well, the purpose of the new schedule certainly should be to create an optimal learning environment for our kids. And you see the phrase dynamic teaching and learning. That's what we want it to be. The Northern Lehigh High School Master Schedule aligns with our highest priority, meeting the diverse needs of each and every student while creating opportunities for all students to be successful. And we think as we move through this, hopefully you'll see how we're trying to capture that. Go ahead, Steve. So also our mission, our primary goal is to equip students with career-ready essential skills. We hear that term over and over again, and our kids can speak to that, while motivating them to set goals, lead by example, network, persevere, participate in effective teams, and demonstrate mental agility, much of which are essential skills. Go ahead, Steve. All right, so this is a key slide that comes from the book that you see there, Learning by Doing. We did, I'm a big believer, I know Allison and our team is big believers in, you don't have to look too far to see amazing schools. And so that's where those are the people we wanted to talk to. We've heard of this lunch and learn model. It's kind of a newer, cutting edge kind of thing. And we really wanted to see schools that were doing that and doing it exceedingly well. So let me just back up a little bit. In elementary and middle schools not as much, but elementary, they have amazing intervention time. Sometimes it's called WIN, what I need. But it's usually time in their day where kids are getting help in whatever areas they need, whatever areas they're deficient in. As you grow in the system and as you get older, because of usually schedules, a secondary schedule, and it's most difficult at the high school because of all the different courses and different teachers, it's very hard for a child to receive or find time for intervention. That's why in a K-12 MTSS structure is difficult sometimes because it tends to break down just by the nature of the beast in secondary. So we're very proud because what this means for us, this lunch and learn model, is just that. Kids can, yes, eat lunch, but they can also, kids and teachers do two other things. Kids can get what they need, can access their teachers, can get extra help, can get remediation, can get whatever it is that they need to be successful. And then I'm going to show you how also teachers, you always hear teachers, we need time, we need time. You hear all of this amazing data we have at the district, but what are we doing with it? When do we do it, and what are we going to do with it? And how does that translate into effective learning, therefore improving our scores and our growth? So this system, which a lot of research has gone into, is just that. It's lunch and learn. It is lunch wrapped around by time to learn. Can you go to the next slide, Steve? All right, so why the change? Well, we know that we need additional time and support for learning to target achievement and growth. That is our first, we know why we need to look at our schedule, right? 2, time for course-alike planning and curriculum work and advancement. We're going to talk about that in a minute. That was that right side of that picture that was just prior to this one. Teacher collaboration. I'm going to show you what that looks like. This I stole from Mr. Pine, number 3. Seat time does not equal mastery. We want focus time for kids to take ownership of their learning. You see this very much more so as kids get older and as they move to, higher ed and things like that. You see kids taking ownership of their learning. We want to begin to systemically foster this independence and teach our students how to wisely use this time. And 4, you see there in capital letters, all students, all kids, including our LCTI, our students attending LCTI, and those with special needs, all kids having access to what they need when they need it, which we know looks different for every child. Can you click that? All right, and this is Dr. Lincoln, my favorite slide on here. Shifts in our fundamental purpose. So on the left is, you're gonna see a drastic difference. Instead of focusing on teaching, we are going to be focusing more and primarily on learning. Instead of emphasis on what we're teaching, what is taught, we're going to look at what students have actually learned and their demonstration of that learning. Assessments determining which students failed, what class, grades, all of that, but our assessments and looking at those assessments and finding out this is what they need and where do we focus the additional time and support, which then will cause them to actually learn the material more deeply. And then instead of professional learning, and my teachers hear us talking about this all the time, instead of professional learning as an event on one day, It is job embedded. It occurs every week with the staff, and I'll show you how that happens because of the people to the left and to the right of you. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. Steve, go ahead. So I'm not going to get too much into this, but you heard me mention the MTSS, whatever we used to call it, RTI, RTII. It's really a tiered approach to learning. So you've got this lunch and learn system for your tier 1 for all of your kids. But there are going to be kids academically and behaviorally with MTSS that you know don't quite fit in to that universal level of tier 1. That's where this system, this lunch and learn, accounts for those students. So we're going to talk a little bit about, let me just briefly, Steve, can you just go to the next slide real quickly? I just wanted to see what that one was. Okay, let's leave it here for a second. So this is what our bell schedule would look like next year, should we adopt this. So we're looking at really taking that homeroom and embedding it into block 1. So in essence, we're looking for feedback on this. We're still kind of up in the air about this. But what that'll do is eliminate that transition time between homeroom and block 1. Less transition time, more time for learning. So if we do that, in essence, your block 1 teacher would be, quote, your homeroom teacher. So you can see our blocks in this proposal are remaining. However, we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. Block 1, block 2, block 3, block 4. You see a 68-minute time frame between block 2 and block 3. So what that is students have the choice to eat, and we've already, I'm looking at Mrs. Fink back there, we've already had discussions with her on the impacts of what this would look like with food service and availability and all of that. So we're working hand in hand with that. But the students could choose what time in that 68-minute time period that they want to eat, because their chemistry teacher might be available the latter half of that 68-minute period, and Lori really needs to go see the chemistry teacher today because we have a test on Friday and I am lost. So I would probably get my lunch earlier that day. So we are really, that's where that independence and that ownership is coming, and we are going to teach the kids this whole structure and this whole process and how to utilize this time wisely. So half of that lunch and learn time, kids and teachers eat lunch, a 30-minute time block. The other half, they are getting what they need. Now, kids, it doesn't matter. They can come and go as they want. Teachers are the ones we are really scheduling. So Allison and I might be science teachers. So we have a 30-minute time frame throughout the day throughout that 68 minutes that we will eat lunch. The rest of that time, I am available for kids, should they need me. Should I need to give some remediation to kids? Maybe I'm working with a group of 10 kids, maybe I'm working with a group of 2. But they can come and access me as needed. So that's what that bell schedule structure looks like. Now, the block would remain. However, we're working really hard this year, and I know you've heard me say this, on what does an effective block look like and what are the expectations for that block. And that professional development and initiative and work that we are doing this year continues and will continue to next year. And we have outside help through the IU helping us frame the blocks. Steve, if you could keep going. So some additional pieces quickly. One more. Teacher collaboration time. So out of that 68 minutes, let's say Allison and I are science teachers, and on a Monday, science teachers are collaborating. That takes me out of the lunch and learn model. That takes me out of the learn. That means I am not available for kids on a Monday, but I'm working on analyzing data, making common assessments, whatever curriculum expectations have been set forth, Alice and I are working on that on a Monday. Maybe the phys ed department and the art teachers, they're a Tuesday. A Wednesday might be the math teachers. So one day out of the week, they're collaborating, planning, analyzing data. The other 4 days of the week, they're available for kids for what they need. Can you go to the next one? Safety and supervision. So it's a scary thing, we know. High school kids
It's not
having,
that scary.
we thought it was,
It'll
right?
be okay.
And
It's gonna
and
be
I
okay.
kept saying we kept saying, they just did it. Like they went out and they went where they were supposed to and they did it. They're like, yep, we ripped the Band-Aid. We gave them some independence and they stepped up. And when you talk to kids, what was the primary thing they said? What do you like about this lunch and learn model? Well, we know they trust us. So, we're training the kids to do something and then we trust them to be able to do it. So safety and supervision, the expectation which will be set forth is students are to conduct themselves in an appropriate manner and observe the rules of courtesy to everyone. In addition, students are expected to clean the area where they eat. They don't have to just eat in the lunchroom. They can eat where they want to eat, and we'll talk more about that. Return lunch trays to the assigned areas. Stay in the areas designated for lunch and learn. And then you can see the rest of that. I just want you to look at this last part. Student misconduct will result in a referral to administration and potentially a temporary loss of lunch and learn privileges. The school we visited twice, Central Bucks East, we talked to a lot of kids when we were there. They don't want to lose this privilege because it really is time for them to decompress, time for them to get extra help, time for them to talk to their friends, time for them to sit where they want with who they want, and they don't want to lose it. So that I just thought it was important to put a safety and supervision piece in there. I think there's one more, Steve. So communication plan. This is extremely important to us, and I know it is to Dr. Link, to just be very transparent. This is where we are, 23-24. We have conducted a needs assessment from key stakeholders. A big one there was the staff. We need to get the staff on board and believing in this, or it is not going to work. And I've said over and over, not only with this, but no matter what we take on together, if one person doesn't believe in it or do it, then we're going to break down. So we have that. I have it over here. Research and visit highly effective schools. We did that with proven excellence in regards to student success, growth, and achievement. Why not watch the best? That's why we went where we went. Regular report our findings to staff, students, families. We've started to talk about it at Coffee and Conversation. We've started to talk about it at Curriculum Council. We are now have the privilege to talk to you about it. And we've gone back and forth. Mr. Kern has received some of the communications with like the questions that we had and the answers that the Central Bucks is giving us. So we just keep going and coming back, going, what do you think? What do you think? Create a plan draft and present to CLC, Education Committee, and School Board. Meet weekly. We have a standing meeting on a Friday, which anyone is more than welcome to attend at 11:30 on a Friday. We are presenting the plan to students, families to gain feedback. And then, of course, you can imagine, the time and the materials and the communication this takes to pull it off. It's hard to capture in 10 minutes, and I know I talk fast, but I think it's a structure that is going to give us the things that we really think we need, time with the kids and really improving relationships, but improving achievement and growth with our kids. And I think this is going to get us to where we need to be.
Can I?
Yes, please.
Okay. So first of all, for those of you that do not know, we went to CB East. I don't know if that was mentioned, okay? So that is a school of 10, 11, 12, 1,300 kids. Okay, so that gives you a scope of the fact that 1,300 kids were managing their own time for 60 or more minutes every single day, okay? So, in my mindset, I'm like, if 1,300, and a big school, big, right? We were there, huge, many nooks and crannies where kids could go. There really isn't designated areas they cannot. Auditorium was one of them, but it's a big school. So, in my mind, my mindset was like 1,300 kids can do this. Now they're on year 4, okay? But 1,300 can do it. A school of 500, like we can do this for sure. The other big piece is that we're a team. It's a team. So in order for the teachers to be able to deliver and do what they need to do with the students, and for students to be able to come to them, we need our administrative staff available every day during lunch and learn. And at CB East, they do have a little bit more with their administration, but on average, for that full 60 minutes every single day, that administrative staff was walking. They are monitoring the whole environment for the whole time. So when something maybe doesn't seem right, like you went into the gym, it was impressive. I mean, there were probably 50 kids in that gym playing basketball. And they were all literally managing their own time. Like, they just had some time to decompress from the day. 80 minutes, 86 minutes, it's a long period of time. And I think adults, we would say that, sitting for that amount of time. So they would monitor a lot of the space, and that is a conversation that we have had already, in terms of would we have that support? Would we be able to count that our administration, our school police officer, our paras, our lunch monitors, that they would be able to be available for that amount of time every single day to help facilitate and monitor. So that is a very key component. I can say from a staff perspective, that is one of the top priorities that we know we're going to need, okay? And I do want to talk a little bit about just contractual stuff, because I know, and maybe but I know the building ops time has consistently got brought up, right? So I do want to make it clear that this is not getting rid of building ops, okay? Because essentially we're building in an extra time during the day for our students, for our teachers to give back to help our students achieve better. But there still will be a prep, and there still will be a piece of building ops. But with that new collaboration, and a lot of the initiatives that Scott is driving, and things that we really want to see in the vision, I see carryover from that collaboration that will happen during lunch and learn once a week into the teachers' building ops time throughout the week, where they will be continuing on looking at data or developing calming assessments, or so it will be more utilized now. I know that's been an issue, ongoing. So I just wanted to address that as well. That we really tried to think of a lot, and I'm sure there's pieces we haven't fully thought of, and it is new. And there are, can we 100% say we know exactly everything that's going to happen? No, but I think we're going to start vetting this out. We're going to introduce it this week to our students when we do our course selection meetings. We're going to introduce it to our parents at Parent Information Night on Wednesday. We do a 3-minute clip from Seneca High School that they created that kind of gives a full vision of it. So, does anybody have any questions?
I do. Could you go back to the schedule?
Sure.
So Allison knows I bring this up. I think that's maybe why she addressed it. So, I have a contract up here. Can you explain how it would work with a 43-minute building operations period and a 43-minute prep period in the schedule? Where that would fit?
How, what would work?
Well, you have 68 minutes for the lunch and learn. I'm taking it to understand that a teacher wouldn't be able to do their 43-minute building operations period and 43-minute prep period during that time.
It would change to 40, so we would have to have a
What would change to 40?
Well, they have an 80-minute period and block, so their current prep would be, let's say, block 180 minutes. So it would be broken into 40 and 40, so they would lose 6 minutes.
We'd have to.
The time is a tentative.
Yeah, that's.
So,
we need
and
to
we have
look
to work
at
with
that for sure.
LCTI, which is
Yeah.
something, and that's kind of where the times
So
came
even
from.
if you did a block
Mhm.
for your prep and building operations period, you're still 6 minutes short.
Mhm. Yeah, we'll have to look at that. Yeah.
And
Yeah, we really had to, and we have ongoing conversations with our LCTI folks every week. So we have to look at that. This is basically like, it should say up there, draft bell schedule.
Yes.
You know, because this is just kind of like, you know, initially it was even less than that. We were thinking like 76 minutes, then it was 83 minutes. We're just trying to get, you know, something on paper and the concept, you know, and then we'll, like Allison said, we have to vet everything and certainly continue to communicate all that as we go through it.
LCTI drives a lot of our schedule because they need a certain amount of time
Yeah.
down there, and they, on their schedule and their times and how our busing goes and when they have to get down there and when they
Yeah.
have to get back, and
Yeah.
that's a lot of what drives
Yeah.
a lot of what happens.
That's a good thing to
So,
look at, Tim,
contract.
for sure.
What time is staff required to be on duty in the morning?
7 o'clock.
7.
And
7 o'clock.
Kids
Mhm.
enter.
And 7:05 kids enter?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And right now,
And contractually, when are they able to leave the building? 2?
2:20,
yes.
Okay,
yeah.
okay. So you could have your 6-minute extra building op period from 2:10 to 2:20.
True.
No, it has to be uninterrupted.
That would be 6 minutes of uninterrupted time.
No, together it's uninterrupted. You can't split it up.
So you're saying you need 43 and
Right.
43?
Right. That's the way it is in the contract.
Yeah, we have.
Okay.
So I like the idea of the lunch and learn. Well,
I like
Yeah,
that too.
we can work that out too.
I'm sorry, I tried to
Yeah.
get watched on the contract. but-
I was just
you know,
brainstorming.
at the end of the day, I really like the idea of the lunch and learn. I think
Yeah.
it gives the flexibility, it gives the accountability to the kids. My secondary question is,
Yeah.
part of, I thought, I was hoping to hear on the schedule is that we were moving away from block scheduling because that was the discussion that was discussed at prior, which that concept of potentially changing and moving to a 6 or 7 day rotation schedule, which allows more classes and more ability for more robust schedule for a student versus I have a 1 semester, these 4 classes, next semester these, and we get rid of those discussions that we're talking about where there's the potential of a student not having a math or a science or an English for a full year. So I thought that's what we were going to hear here. So I'm happy to hear half of it. I love the idea of the lunch and learn concept, but I'm not so sure yet that we've addressed the block scheduling concept unless you have and we just haven't heard about it.
No, I agree with Gail, because that's what I was expecting
So-
also.
I think, I want to know how quickly you want the change, because I don't know if we can. I'm very
I'm with you,
serious, because
Allison.
I'm not sure
So-
if
so
we
I've been
can
on the
make that
board 9
change going
years.
into next year.
But do you want to talk about,
That makes my day.
Yeah.
I'm happy for it. Don't change a thing.
yeah,
Let's just get better at what we do.
right,
And that's, there's a concept to that, right? It's either we have to change what we're doing and how we're doing it, which
Yeah.
maybe the lunch and learn is part of it, but that's only 68 minutes, which is 33 minutes of a concept that's changing versus, to your point, Mr. Kern, of getting better at how we're doing it. I don't like to hear that 40 minutes of the class I'm doing work and 40 minutes of the class I'm sitting
And
doing something else and not learning.
I am happy to address
I'm
that.
not saying that that's occurring
Yes,
across
we
the
know.
board, nor every day,
Sure.
but there is a perception of that.
Yeah.
And the idea that we were talking about was driving that change
Yes.
from block scheduling
To tradition.
to traditional teaching because we weren't addressing that.
So the focus was on changing the schedule to meet the needs of the students.
Right.
So LCTI was an issue, special
Special ed.
education was an issue. So we investigated what schedule would be best to try to meet the needs of all students. It didn't necessarily mean that we're gonna move to block or a rotating block or a traditional schedule. We investigated what schedule would be best. Right now, this is what we're looking at. This has the backing of the high school administration and the staff as they dove into what some of the issues were. I don't disagree that we need to use the block better in order to see student results and to give students what they need. So we are able to correct the LCTI issues. We're able to get students back on campus for more time. They're going to eat here. They're going to be able to participate in the lunch and learn and get what they need as well. And we right now have a schedule where some of the classes have to be adjusted for them. For instance, history they have to take all year rather than in a block. So we're able to work with LCTI and work out that issue and get our students back to participate as the rest of our students do. We're working through some of the special education concerns too about how often they get math and ELA and how we work with those supports as well. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, and I just wanted to speak, kind of like piggyback on what Mr. Kern says. And I hear what you're saying, and my response, and I've been in a situation where I've, been a principal in traditional periods and I've been in a principal in block. Regardless of the structure of the instructional period, it's all about the teacher. And what they are doing, is it dynamic, engaging instruction for 43 minutes, or is it dynamic, engaging instruction for 86 minutes? So I think that's where you were going with that, is great teaching is great teaching is great teaching, no matter what structure it is. And yes, that is a paramount, probably the biggest focus aside from student safety and student needs. Our effective instruction is up here, as far as expectations, rigor, consistency, and what we are looking for and what every child deserves in that instructional time period. So yes, we have a lot of work to do there, but, and this isn't something that Mike and I single-handedly with, support from key people in the building. We've recruited Mike Peter, who's amazing from the IU. We need help, and we've acknowledged that, listen, we're looking at this block, and these are our clear expectations. And then when we get this collaboration time once weekly, it's even going to up that ante a little bit. This is what we're looking for, then it's going to be practiced in the classroom. So I hear exactly what you're saying, and that was a concern of mine as well. But I think no matter what format, we need to establish what those rigorous expectations are and consistently support that in the classroom.
And I'll just add that this is some of our PACE data that you'll see up here. This is the most recent PACE survey. This is, we give this at 4th, 6th, 8th, 10th, and 12th. But if you look at 10th and 12th graders for this question in particular, they're asking for one-on-one time with their teachers. Right now you'll see 10th grade is saying only 31% of them are saying that they have that time with their teacher. 27% of 12th graders are saying that. This is going to be an opportunity for students to have face-to-face contact time with their teachers to get what they need. So to get, help with tests, to get preparation for what they're going to do after school, if they're taking AP classes, whatever that contact time is that they need. But this is, again, trying to respond to some of the needs that our students have.
So is that
Dr.
30
Brown?
minutes going to be enough for like a teacher to handle whatever number of kids come there? You know what I'm saying?
I mean, what we saw, we didn't see one class in that building of 1,300 and some kids where there were like more than 10 kids at one time. Some you would walk by and there'd be 3 kids in there. Another might be 8. Another might be 10. And then you'd walk down to the chorus room and kids would be singing and, playing guitars and things like that. I mean, it was something. It was something to see. But there was no room that was unmanageable. And teachers can really, expect, some days they'll expect a lot more than others if there's an upcoming test coming up, and so I think they learn to kind of, yes, thank you, and kind of suspect like, I'm going to have this many kids today, I'm going to have this many kids today, that kind of thing. Something we didn't say, that if a teacher doesn't have a student in their room on any given day, like nobody where's all my kids? They're out getting help somewhere else. I am moving out to the hallway and I am monitoring those kids, and I'm accessible to them. They can see me. I'm not back in my room. So that's just another layer of support. You didn't see many teachers out there because they were in with kids. But the one or two that might have been not accessed that time period, they were out in the hall.
And I think too, when you really talk to students about schedules, block, I mean, I understand the needs in terms of math now and then maybe not till next spring. And there's things that we can address with that, but traditional schedule, there's something to be said about it, 8 periods a day. And then there's something else to be said about it.
I'm gonna go back to
And,
traditional.
so, I understand a rotating block, maybe an A-B type schedule. There's a lot more work that has to, I'm gonna be honest with you, there's a lot more work. I agree. I think that this is meeting our kids where we need them, and I feel pretty confident that we're gonna be able to see growth, achievement, more accountability for learning, teachers more engaged with our students. Hopefully, we're working, I know Dr. Bali and Mr. Stroll are working really hard on what does a block schedule look like? How should you be delivering, what does that look like? And that is, that has been a big focus, I know, in the past.
It's also a big need.
It is a big need.
It's a big need.
And
Absolutely.
I have kids too, so I totally understand when you ask certain questions, so.
And I go back to the concept of, we say even that summertime, it's only 2 months, and we say there's learning loss.
Yeah.
Yes.
And hearing that sometimes our students don't have our key courses for potentially 2 semesters, that's concerning, and trying to figure out how to do that, because if we feel that kids are learning loss in 2 months, how are they functioning to that same level? And how do we want them to show growth when they've lost the usage of that, or we don't have the collaboration that if they don't have math, that history at some level, that's a full-time thing. How is history using math to use that same concept to grow it? So I agree that the block scheduling can be done if taught in that way. We're not doing it, so how do we do it?
Right.
Did Central Bucks share anything that really went wrong the first year, or any big lessons that they learned?
Those were always my questions. Very little. Very little.
They had to train some of the kids a little bit,
with little things like, that table left their garbage there. So what did, Dr. Waters do, principal? He'd go over, take a picture, show him the picture the next day and said, you left this here yesterday. I cleaned it up for you. Make sure it's there. Make sure you clean it up today. So what Allison said about us walking, being active, we are not in our office. We are not in the hall. We are moving. And I always remember him saying, kids are creatures of habit. So what he would do is, he might see a group of 4 kids sitting on the floor a couple days in a row. The next day they came, they had a table and some chairs there, because that's where those kids wanted to be and that's where they would gravitate. So he knew where most of those, with 15 or 1,300 kids, he knew where most of them were. Groups of kids, you're going to see, Matt over here, you're going to see Allison over here, Lori's going to be over there. He knew where they were. And it was pretty predictable. But no, nothing major, because I think they had done their homework. They communicated and got feedback, from our groups, you're giving to us now, Mr. Weber, all of that. They were transparent with the kids, transparent with the parents, that I think they had a lot of it covered. And then when there were those kids that weren't understanding, they'd reteach the expectation. And kids don't want to lose that time. They value that. Yeah.
I think we're getting hung up on 2 different issues here.
Yeah.
And I understand the concept of block scheduling, but to me, that has nothing to do with the whole lunch and learn concept.
Yeah.
And I had some conversation with some people, a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I'm 100% in favor of the lunch and learn concept. And I would like to see you pursue it. If you can work out the time frames and things like that. And I think there's time in the schedule. You can make that happen. You might have to redo it. But block scheduling, we can get back to that another time. And I would like to see some discussion on that. But as far as lunch and learn, my 100% support of
I do have
that.
a suggestion, I was just talking.
Yeah.
I love the idea too. Most teachers teach, 3 blocks, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So could you not have a teacher do their building operations period, the period before, the period after lunch? And that way you would tie in
with the lunchtime, then you'd be able to get the 43 or 43.
But things like that, you know, like you see things.
Yeah, I think we're getting hung up on logistics and more so.
Well, it's just something.
Yeah, no, I agree, and it's got to be addressed. There's no question about it. I agree with you. What I liked about it, and I had some experience in trying to develop this at a high school that I worked at, and we did visit a high school as well. So I'm very familiar what it looks like, the feel of it. Nothing's going to have real smooth paved roads year one or even year two. But don't forget that teachers can also tag kids. So I'm going to tag you to come see me that period, and not necessarily that child is just going to float around for 68 minutes and do nothing. So if they're struggling, it could be very well that several teachers are tagging that student for that period of time until they show that they're starting to have some success. That's one of the things I liked about it. So yeah, the kids have freedom, and that's great, and they should. And 90% of the kids are going to be able to handle that. But you're always going to have your 10% that won't. There's going to be discipline issues, and they'll be addressed.
Yep, and Mr. Kern, thank you for bringing that up, because kind of that slide that I kind of skipped over, that tier, that's what Mr. Kern's talking about, is those tier 2 and tier 3 kids. If they're failing, by the way, they're scheduled. So they are in a learn environment for a reason, and they're there for a period of time until they're passing. And then they get kind of like, okay, now I can pick and choose again. But those tier 2 and tier 3 kids, instead it's more of like, we're going to put you here because you need support here. Right. And when you don't need that support anymore, we're going to pull it away from, we're going to ease it away from you. So thank you for bringing that up, because that's what those higher levels of the triangle are for.
So those kids will be forced to go to, not
Yep,
just
they
allowed to
will
choose,
be,
right?
yes,
That's
yes.
really what I was saying.
And
Right.
if they, this is getting into the nitty gritty, but if they skip that,
Yeah,
that's considered a class cut.
Right.
okay.
So there's a high level of accountability and expectations for these kids, so, and,
Make it happen.
so, and we felt the sense of urgency. We knew, and this is, we knew we had to do something. We knew what we could probably at least get to this year, and we're going to attack it, like, if we have your support, full on, and I think we're going to see some major growth.
And one other advantage of this is, if you're a high school junior or senior and you need to see your guidance counselor, you're missing instruction. This is a great opportunity for kids to see their guidance counselors,
Yep.
to go see any counseling that they might need or have the need for. It's also, I think, as far as when you start looking at professional development, we're talking about building common assessments, and where my passion is. And all those questions were my questions that I asked about the data. Not going to lie. I have a big concern about what we're doing with data, our process of using data, and how it's getting used as far as helping our kids become successful. Now we're talking high school, which is its own animal. It's very difficult to get teachers to come together at a common time because they're teaching all the blocks. Well, now if they have this designated, I'm going to use Monday time, and you said science, well, my science teachers are there. So as a building principal, I can meet with them, or as a curriculum director, I could come along and meet with them there, because I know that's when they're specifically going to all be there at one time. So there's a lot of advantages on all ends, for kids, for remediation, and also for staff collaboration. So.
And by the way, during that staff collaboration time, one of the administrators is always in there with them. So we are highly engaged in the instructional piece of that building, which I think is amazing. Right, Mr. Pine?
It works if the kids know the rules and they're engaged, and that's the bottom line. So.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
So what are our next steps with this? So as a board member, what we need to do now?
So So we're going to get into the nitty gritty of it now, where we wanted to present it to you, get your feedback. We are going to start meeting this week, as Allison said. We've kind of been getting kids like on an informal, like, what do you think of this kind of thing? But we're going to do it a little more formally on Wednesday when we meet with the kids and then some of the parents. And we're just going to start kind of communicating it out to all the stakeholders and plan next steps. Really that last piece where creating aspects of materials, communication, laying out the expectations, looking at the schedule, we got to start really finalizing some of that stuff and presenting it to you then.
Okay, so Dr. Lick, are we looking at a board approval, or are we saying, hey, let's go for it? I don't know where, you know what I'm saying? What's our process?
So technically, in my opinion, it would not require board approval.
Correct.
But I sure would like board public support of a decision of this magnitude. I think it's important that our students, our faculty, and our community see that the school board is behind a design like this. I'm hearing that you still want additional information, so I would ask that this come back to this committee monthly, but probably we're going to want to give some updates at the board meetings in between.
Sounds good.
Yep. Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, I think we're down to Mr. Pine.
Okay. So I'll just use my transition to say I'm very, very excited about this. I think this is the type of second order change that schools need to be making in order to change the entire way our systems work. There's no turning back from a system like this. You know, we will have professional staff behaving and operating together collaboratively like professionals because we've created the space for that, and students as active learners. I think it will flip our tiered structures. I think that we're going to see very few students who are struggling in need of support, and that's my transition into the ELA adoption update. So right now, this is kind of taking some strange turns for me along the way. I often thought we'd be going through a process where we begin with a set of eligible programs to review and look at, one of which is the Wonders program that we currently have with its updated version, and then there were 3 others. As we went through the process, I think my own, stubbornness about the fact that that was supposed to narrow itself down to 2 contenders in a battle royale for our attention, that kind of had me working through it that way until eventually we had our last ELA adoption committee meeting, and as we went over the data from the initial evaluation that all of our teachers participated in from our presentations, from the various vendors and companies, it ended up being very clear that 1, Amplify CKLA is a clear, I'm going to use the word favorite. I don't like that. It doesn't sound very technical and professional, but I'm going to use that for now. Based on the criteria that we outlined as our priority needs within the district, which went to things like differentiating and meeting the needs of various students, improved writing instruction from what we currently have within our programming, better alignment to the standards and to what we were seeing students needing to perform on state assessments, as well as just better alignment to practices within the science of reading, within good instructional practices tied to students building foundational literacy, and then throughout the rest of their career, the comprehension and the application skills that make us good literate people. And CKLA came out as the solid lead with over a 20% stretch above the 2 second place contenders at that time. So right now we're moving forward in sort of a way that I think is maybe a little bit unconventional to what I expected, which is a very, very focused examination of Amplify CKLA as the potential recommendation right now. If they continue as we move through this to demonstrate that it is everything that the teachers and us as an administration are perceiving it to be from those presentations and our initial material reviews, then I expect there is the possibility that we may not be coming to you and saying we choose this over this. We could potentially be coming to you, I guess the worst case scenario, and saying this does not meet what we thought. And we're walking out of this process this year not feeling confident that we can make a recommendation of that kind of investment, right? And I hope that this board would see that as the responsible thing to do if we came to that conclusion. But I think the possible outcome on the other end there is that we're coming and we're saying, we're not divided on this at all between two potential programs. We very much feel that this program will support our needs. So I'm happy to, I have been throughout the update, share any additional information about this program, which the CKLA program runs K through 5, and then there is a CK or Amplified ELA program, which we would then pick up for our 6th grade as well at the top end of Slatington Elementary, so that we would have one coherent program which answers to both sides of Scarborough's reading rope with all of the foundational literacy skills, then blending into a solid reading comprehension and understanding program as well. So our next steps right now, we're going to meet next Tuesday. In the meantime, I've been reaching out to districts from a few areas around the state, to be honest. And it's just because CKLA is only beginning to get its spread around Pennsylvania. There's probably about a dozen or so schools around the state that have begun to use this. But where it's been picking up sort of virally, spreading out from a hub within different communities, such as out in Pittsburgh, Cumberland Valley in the middle of the state, and then a couple of areas just sort of in between us in the middle of the state, and now the names are escaping me, but where like a district is picking it up, and then districts as satellite districts are beginning to pick it up as well. We're going to meet with some of them virtually in order to get some questions answered about the decisions they made, some of the transitions that they went through, because it does have a different structural base to what we're used to in terms of the basal reader programs like Wonders and Journeys and Reading Street before it. It is a knowledge-based curriculum, which is slightly different. But as we work through that, we also are hopefully going to be able to arrange some field trips out for the selection committee members to be able to see it. And it seems like textbook companies have gotten wise to the problem that we often see with pilots, which is that they're a real struggle to pull off, especially in accountability error classrooms where testing is a concern and things of that nature. And so CKLA does have what they call a CKLA experience, which is a week to 2 week experience that they're going to send out to all of our teachers. And we're going to recruit within that group teachers to actually participate in the experience, to follow through in a sort of mini experience and pilot. But every teacher in the district will have access to all the materials for that. So even if they're not engaging in it in the classroom, they'll be able to participate in the conversations and understand what's going on throughout that. I expect that all to occur over the next 6 weeks. So I'll definitely be bringing you an update at our April meeting. And I hope that through that April meeting and then sewing up some final pieces in April, that I'll be able to in May begin some real conversations about a recommendation. So I think that's all I have to say about it right now, but I'm more than happy to answer questions. It has been an interesting process. There's a lot more information, but that's as condensed as I can get.
Any questions? So it's K to 5?
So Amplify CKLA
Yeah.
is K to 5, yes.
Okay.
If they do run a 6 through 8 program, I don't know about a secondary, like out and out high school one.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, I guess that's all for the Education Committee. And we will close and turn it over to policy.
I'll go ahead and open policy and turn it over to Dr. Stoker.
Thank you, Mrs. Husak. I'll do my best to make these as brief as I can. We have 2 policies on the agenda for this evening. The first one is policy 705, facilities and workplace safety. There are just 2 really quick changes that were made on this policy. We changed Chris Mann's position, which used to be the Director of Support Services, to Director of Operations, so you'll see that changed throughout. And then I believe we brought it to the Buildings and Grounds Buildings and Grounds Committee previously, that we were looking at having electronic access control devices that would be cards with an embedded fob in that card, and our pictures, staff pictures on those. So we took out the word key fob and we switched that over to electronic access control devices to be whatever we end up using. So it covers any of those. So those are really the only 2 changes to this policy. So any questions, comments? Do we have the ability of the board members present to move this to Monday night for a first reading?
Yes.
Okay. Next one is policy 800. This is records management. This policy was updated for 2 reasons, to incorporate general references to security measures and to also update and to address the responsibility of individuals and service providers involved in records management. So on the first page, that first green sentence that you come to really just talks about maintenance and destruction of records. And we get into the definitions. The definitions, we've just more clearly defined what a litigation hold is. So if at all we're being sued that we have to put a hold on our records, things can't be deleted, thrown away, we need to just kind of pause at that period in time. Records, well, what is a record? This has changed over time. It used to be paper, then it became electronic. It comes in a lot of different forms. So this is change with the changing times. So the definition of records was updated as well. Delegation of responsibility, this talks about anybody that's responsible for records must adhere to what's in this policy. Further down, our records management committee, we added the open records officer to that, and we had director of technology, which previously was called information technology director, so we just, again, changed that title. The records coordinator is our superintendent, who is the chairperson of that committee. It spells out what the coordinator's responsibilities are in the next few that follow. Talks about a records management plan and some of the data that we need to make sure that we do manage, records of employees, data breaches, how those are handled. And then the very end, the last piece that was added was with regard to service providers, previously called contractors, that the board requires service providers contracted by the district to create, maintain, retain, and dispose of district records in the same way that we would if we were doing it in-house. So those are all the changes to that policy. Any questions or comments? Do we have the ability of the board members present to move that for first reading to the board meeting next week?
Yes.
Okay. That's all we have.
All right. Any other questions for policy? I'll go ahead and close policy and turn it over to Mr.
You gotta go pretty far out.
I was going down, going, oh, it's alphabetical, so good, that's first.
I was really
That's
hoping my
first.
name wasn't before yours.
It's an honor to chair this committee this evening. Turn it over to Mr. Hill.
Does this mean we get the night off since the chair and
Yeah.
what's everybody here? Okay, mine will be quick. The only update I have tonight for the board is per policy 706.1. It's our recycling policy. I wanted to let the board know that we are planning on recycling some electronic equipment. We will be using a company called Sycamore. I think it's Sycamore International or something like that. But it's a company that we've used the last since I've been here. We've been using them 5 years. We may have used them even before I came here. So they've always given us really good deals on recycling. So what we're planning on recycling, we have multiple pallets. We have a pallet of TVs, some CRTs, LED TVs. We have a pallet of old Dell projectors that we pulled out of some of the classrooms that we replaced the past few years. We have a pallet of laptop cords, and we have a pallet of miscellaneous things with cords, monitors, printers, broken screens, etc. And then we have a pallet of old Chromebooks, and just so everybody knows what we do with the old Chromebooks, we usually pull out the LCD, anything useful we pull out of it before we put it in the recycling pile. Yeah, we take everything we can. Our staff does a really good job of that. That way we have spare parts and we don't have to order so many spare parts. So we have a pallet of Chromebooks, and pretty much, like I said, it's almost everything's removed out of them. And then we do have some things that may have some value. We do have 3 pallets of old laptops that we may get up to about $50 a device if they are in good condition. So we may actually end up getting some money back on this deal. We may get, I'm not going to know until we turn it in and they evaluate the equipment, but we may get $20,000, $25,000 for all this equipment that we're going to turn in. And yeah, so anyway, that's all I have. Does anybody have any questions about that? This is something we do on a yearly basis typically, so just notifying the board that that's what we're doing. Okay, no questions, that's all I have.
Good. I just want to say, we've been here almost 2 hours, and I just took a break. If anybody, maybe, I'm just going to call a 5-minute break, and if anybody needs to take a walk, get a drink, whatever. And I get to chair the next committee again. Look at that, 2 in a row. It's all yours.
Thank you very much.
A lot of my stuff's updates. I got an update from ELA again about the baseball and softball project. The Lehigh Valley Planning Commission is recommending a conditional approval upon a couple items that they want finished. Actually, it has it up on the board. They want a surveyor's signature with a stamp. A lot of it is just based on the plans and the prints. Tyler doesn't feel that anything major. He'll let me know by next week. I should start getting stuff as to what needs to be done on our end. Any questions with that?
No, we could just get it going.
Yep. He's telling me that in his words, this looks good for our timeline. So that's good for me to hear. So the next thing is FS Direct renewal. FS Direct is the software that Mr. Geist and myself use for activities throughout the buildings. So the proposal is for 1 year is $2,186.73, or we can get locked in at the same rate for 3 years. Now, it's not an upfront cost of the $6,560. It's actually billed every year for the $2,186. So I'm looking to the board to put that on Monday night for approval.
I just have a question. What
Sure.
is this used for? And I'm sorry.
This is FS Direct. This is what we
I
use.
apologize.
Mr. Geist and myself will just go with tonight alone. We had 8 different activities throughout our
scheduling.
buildings.
Perfect.
It's all scheduling
Okay,
for, it would get too much for the two of us to
Got
try
it.
and handle. So we use this software. It compiles everything for us on a daily and
Go for
hourly
it. Go
basis.
for it. Go for it.
What do you want, anybody have a problem with it?
So I think, are we good with
3.
the 3
3 years?
Might lock it,
Thank
I
you.
would lock it down.
Yep.
Okay, the next agenda item is something that was shared with us early last week from our connection to the United Way of the Greater Lehigh Valley. Her name is Ms. Jill Pereira. They are working on a grant. So the United Way of the Greater Lehigh Valley is working on a grant to submit to the Department of Environmental Protection to specifically support schools with enrollments of lower socioeconomic student populations. So our school district meets that profile, that criteria. What they would like to do is, if they are successful in receiving the grant from the DEP, they're looking for 2 to 3 schools in the Lehigh Valley that would install indoor air quality monitoring devices in the school. And that would collect data on 8 different indicators that the DEP then could monitor to see, are schools that have children with lower socioeconomic profiles more susceptible or more likely to be educated in buildings with poor indoor air quality, and then what may be the educational impact on that if that is the case. So really what they're looking to do up front is to collect data. There is no cost to the school district. We would simply be the site where the indoor air quality is being monitored, and we would have complete access to the data. They would install they basically look like something like that up there on the ceiling. They would be installed a couple different places throughout the school buildings. They do not interface with our network, so it must be like a cellular signal, which then updates a web-based dashboard. So we would access the dashboard through our internet, but the signals are not running through our internet. And that would tell us the indoor air quality in our buildings. And the indicators that they measure are temperature, humidity, CO2 levels, so CO2, barometric pressure, lumens, so like the light in the building. They actually measure presence in the building, because what they want to see is if there's motion, is the motion in an area of the building where, say, maybe CO2 levels are high or the humidity is high. And then also particulate in the air. So what's the level of particulate in the air? We would own the data. The data would be anonymized. However, and there's both some back and forth on this, so finally I asked our open records legal advisor today that the data, if somebody from outside of the school district, because it's a publicly funded grant, the data would be subject to right to know. Which, I mean, right now, let's say if we were to have Spot Stevens McCoy to come in, remember how we had a number of years back, we had them coming in and doing air quality samples for things like mold. That data is also open to, is subject to right to know, so this would not be any different to it. So the most recent legal advice on this, as of about 4 hours ago this evening, is that the data would be open to right to know request. I do want to share that all with you just for full transparency. I don't think that we have anything that I would be concerned being out there as far like as a right to know. There is no, at the end of the 5 years, the school district can, I'm sorry, I have my back to all of you. At the end of the 5 years, the school district can simply say, thank you for the data, we are now ending our relationship with this. If we wanted to, we could then, IotaCom is the name of the company that actually installs the devices and gives us access to the air quality monitoring dashboard, which we would designate who in our district has that, kind of like we do for our current HVAC systems. That's all web-based as well. It would give us as an administrative team to make any recommendations or bring any air quality concerns to the school board. But at the end of 5 years, if we don't want to continue with that, we just end it. They are also working on a component that would, of course, be an educational component of the United Way of the Greater Lehigh Valley is working on to possibly attach air quality to the steel standards moving forward and kind of make it like a learning opportunity for our students. What we would have to do is basically sign a letter of support for the United Way of the Greater Lehigh Valley saying we would like to be a site to have the devices installed. So I've sat through 2 meetings with this now with them and the other local district that is considering it. I don't know which way they're going to go, but they're considering it, is Easton Area School District. Outside of the grant, Allentown School District has already gone ahead independent of this and installed all of these devices in I think all of their buildings. So they've just committed to the investment to do it. Their buildings are, I would say, in a different state than most of our buildings, so they wanted to just go all in right now and do it. And I believe the other district, which has kind of moved forward with this already, is Tamaqua. So I kind of have the one-sheeter up there. I believe I also shared the one-sheeter in the most recent board update. Kind of open-ended questions, concerns, and I'm interested to see if the committee would support the letter of agreement appearing on the board agenda for Monday.
Yeah.
You okay, Bob?
Oh, absolutely.
Sure.
If we have an issue, then even if it's right to know, let's fix it.
Find out, it won't cost any money.
We should,
So we'll know if there's an issue?
we'll,
with the
we'll,
monitoring?
once they're installed and we're
Right.
trained on how to
Like when we
use
see
it,
rising
we would
CO2
know.
levels or
Yes.
kids complaining about headaches and stuff,
Yes.
you could look at the thing and go, oh, our CO2 level's high, we gotta address this.
Right.
Which has happened in schools.
Yes, and so right now, Mr. Mann monitors all of our HVAC units, and he can do all of that through a dashboard as well. So this would be a similar type of scenario, and I would probably say Mr. Mann and maybe our HVAC technician gets trained up on how to utilize the dashboard, and then share any concerns with us, which we would bring to the board.
Are those monitors in every classroom?
No,
hallway?
each monitor covers, I think, about 3,500 square foot. Let me see here. It's a significant square footage, so it may actually only be a couple monitors in each building.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would assume they would select areas they
Right.
feel would be.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Still good. Okay.
Okay, then I will get back to them tomorrow, and you'll see something on the board agenda for Monday evening. Thank you, everyone, for that conversation, and I will turn it back to Mr. Mann.
Lost my just a little more information. The maintenance department and the IT department have been working together. A couple weeks ago with a power outage, we realized a couple issues with the IT closets. There's no emergency backup. So the maintenance and our electrician and Eric and his guys have been working together to get generator backup power to all of his closets. Right now, I think they're at, 3 or 4 closets that they've finished. We do still have some more to do. Some of the runs are very long, so they have to pull the wires at night. I have one run in the middle school alone, it is over 300 feet. So it takes a little bit of time to pull that through the ceiling.
Big improvement, though. I really appreciate it.
Yep. The guys are doing great work. Like I said, they do have a bunch of cabinets already finished, or closets rather. There's still more to do, but. And the last one, Keith got his new washer and dryer in the warehouse, so he's quite happy. To give you guys, I don't know, I think we had it on before, the washer and dryer was 35 years old.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Bring her a washer, huh?
Yeah, no, not quite.
What brand is that?
So, yeah.
This one won't last that long, don't worry.
That's the way we used to make them 35.
That's right.
Yeah.
Very
true. You got, I was just gonna say, I'm curious about that, baby.
Yeah.
Heating oil.
Heating oil delivery?
Yep, we had 2 more deliveries of heating oil, one for the high school, one for Slatington, both at contract rates. So that was already set from last year. And with the warmer weather, the maintenance guys have also been doing spring cleanup, trimming trees, cutting down trees. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions? If not, Ms. Cole?
I'd like to call the finance committee meeting.
To order and turn it over to Mrs. Fink.
Great. Most of mine are updates also, but I do have one new topic here. I recently sat through a webinar discussing summer feeding programs and just any changes to that in preparation for the upcoming summer. And one thing that was changed is if you are a school that is in a rural area, you use this map to figure out, and Peters was the only one of the 4 that hit within a rural area to be able to serve grab-and-go style service like we did through the year with COVID. The last 2 years, we had to do congregate meal service, not grab-and-go. So unfortunately, Peters being the only school, having them do food for all the camps that really mainly everything that we do over the summer is on the main campus. It's ideal, again, for us to stick with pretty much the similar plan that we had the last 2 years and open Slatington and the high school, which can still serve meals to the community if I choose to do them as open sites. So you could do open sites, you could do closed sites. There's so many different ways you can do it with summer feeding. When you're an open site, that just means, yes, you could feed the camps, but also the community who would sign up weekly to come and dine with us. Unfortunately, when you have to come and sit and eat versus grab and go, we didn't really have a great turnout the last couple of years with that. But just to be able to, logistically, just where all of our camps are, it just makes the most sense to have the 2 sites that we've been doing and running in a similar way that we did the last 2 years. So that's pretty much it with that. Just threw on here again with the dishwasher at the high school. What, if you remember from last time, we're looking to purchase a new dishwasher there. And Singer actually was out again last Thursday to take some measurements and try to get us to a better quote than what was initially quoted to us to get, it was a quite broad range from the 3 different quotes that we got before. So that's still in the works, nothing decided upon there. Staffing, we have had some staffing shortages, a little bit of a staffing crisis recently, but we did hire for 4 positions. Unfortunately, 2 did not work out, but we do have 2 ladies who just started with us over the last couple weeks who are working out great. So we did have to repost those 2 positions again, which Adrian did for me last week, and we do have some interest already. Some of our current food service staff, putting their feelers out, and some family members, friends, who are interested, are planning on applying for that. So hopefully we'll be doing some interviews again over the next week or so. And then lastly, Roundup at the Register, just throwing out another reminder for that. That's still going. Last 2 years they did it just through January and February. They've extended it this year through the end of March. So we're still in the middle of that. So if you're ever at Giant, don't forget to round up when you check out. And that's pretty much it for food service.
Sherry.
Any questions or anything?
No, I think it's great that they're doing the 3 months. I mean,
Yeah,
that's more for us
yeah,
to do.
definitely.
Okay, Sherry, you're up.
I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Link. He's starting it.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Moltors. So this evening, we're going to share kind of the first public look at some budgetary considerations for the 24-25 school year. The focus of tonight's presentation is going to be primarily on staffing and facilities. A lot of the information that we use to build our budget on an annual basis is not yet available. As that information comes in, we'll be able to kind of refine the presentation over the next couple months. Next slide, please. I'm going to turn it back over to Mrs. Moltors.
Yeah, so this is currently we have those ESSER funds. The ESSER 1's monies has been expended. It's been expended for over a year. ESSER 2, we did expend the remainder of that, the remaining amount of that money in early 2023-2024 school year. It had to be spent by September of 23, so it was all spent, and all the reports are done with that, and that one is gone as well. ESSER 3, we were awarded $2.95 million. That has to be spent by September of 2024. Our remaining encumbered monies are roughly about $522,000. That is an estimate on what we're going to need to fund those current positions that have been in the budget, and also our summer programs to finish out the summer programs, busing and that kind of stuff for the summer program. The remaining unencumbered amount is roughly about $198,000. And we are looking at using that to potentially fund that ELA program that Mr. Pine was talking about. ESSER 3B is still, we have the same thing till September of 2024 to use that. Learning loss was $163,000. After school programs was 32, summer enrichment was 32. All of that money is earmarked to be spent by September of 2024 as well.
What are you spending it on?
That stuff, after school programs is tutoring and stuff that's happening after school. Summer enrichment stuff is getting some of the stuff for the summer programs we'll use to spend that out. And learning loss is a social worker is being paid for that, as along with some SEL, socio-emotional learning stuff for teaching staff and for students.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so our Act 1 index, the Independent Financial Office came out with the Act 1 index for the 24-25 school year. The base is 5.3, Northern Lehigh's adjusted is 7.1. And then they also projected where that fund balance, or Act 1 index, is going to go over the next couple of years. So 25-26, it's going to drop, they're projecting it to drop to 4%. 26-27 to go to 3.6. 27-28 to 3.2, and 28-29 to 3.1. So currently we're at 5.3, and they're estimating that within the next 4 years it's going to drop to 3.1. Again, that's base index. Ours will be adjusted then based on our adjusted index. PSERS contribution rate projections as of June 30th, based on the 7% market rate of return. So this past year, when I say past year, I mean 23-24 school year, the school year that we're currently in, that one is 34%. It did slightly go down next year for the 24-25. It's going to 33.9. Then it's projected to start increasing again. So for the 25-26, it's going to jump to it's projected to jump to 34.72, 26-27 to 35.41, and then 27-28 to 35.94. So if you can see, our Act 1 index is lowering, and our PSERS is going to go up. So just keep that in mind, that's the game we're going to have to play for a little while longer yet.
What did you say, Sherry? I'm sorry, the 2023 PSERS rate was?
34%,
Okay.
and it dropped by a 0.1.
34 even?
Yes,
Okay.
34 even this year. Yep. Go ahead, Stephen.
Okay, so this is a slide you should be familiar with from over the past few years worth of budget presentations. It's the current year enrollments, a 3-year look back, and then the projections for the 24-25 school year. So it's important to note that right now for this school year, it says we have 1,578, and that number represents the number of Northern Lehigh students in our buildings. So excluded from that number are any outplaced students that are Northern Lehigh students, as well as any students from other school districts that we are educating in our buildings. So IU classrooms, every one of our buildings has at least one IU classroom. Those numbers are not captured in that 1,578. Following that same explanation, next year we're anticipating about 1,612 students in our buildings, not counting out-of-district placements or IU students from other districts educated in our buildings. The point to me that I'm saying that is we have already well over 1,600 students that Northern Lehigh is responsible for. That number is growing. The kind of wild card there is next year's kindergarten class. We're projecting 130 to 140. As of last Friday, we are aware of 81 students that have kind of like a registration appointment for kindergarten. That number will continue to rise. And as you're aware, sometimes it rises into the start of the new school year. But we're anticipating about 130 to 140. So another way to look at all that data and more of a visual representation, if you could go to the next slide, Mr. Hawes. Thank you, sir. Is through this bar graph here. Each color represents a different building. You can see the color code at the bottom. I'm going to call your attention to, let's say, the 2020-2021 school year. If we kind of start with that year with Peters Elementary School, you'll see that it dips a little bit the following year, and by a little I mean, you know, three students or so. But then it steadily climbs through this year and is projected to climb again next year. So really we went from about 358 projected up to 421. That's, for a small school, that's a notable incline. Same for Slatington Elementary School. So if again, I'm going to call your attention to 2020-2021, where they had 456 students. Next year we're projecting 490 students at Slatington Elementary School. Again, considerable growth. The middle school is probably our most stable school as far as enrollment goes currently. Again, 2020-2021, we are at 347. Projected for next year, we're at 247 to 235. High school is growing, 450 in 220, 221. Next year, we're projected to be at 493. Please keep in mind, though, that as those larger numbers move up through Peters School and Elementary School, they're obviously going to hit the middle school with Mr. Hauser's, where he's currently housing 2 school grades. So again, our numbers are increasing in the school district. Next slide, please. as we get to the employee profile here, I'd like to share, there's kind of a 3-year look back, or actually a 4-year look back, the current year, and then what we're projecting for next year with our current recommendations. You'll see that overall we're looking at a net loss of 2 support staff in the district, staying balanced for professional staff at 129, balanced for administration at 16, and then a net difference of 2, again going back to the 2 support staff. So now we're going to get in the weeds a little bit here. If you look at the red annotation at the bottom there, it says that this includes 1 FTE, full-time equivalent BCBA. A BCBA is a board-certified behavior analyst. Currently, we work with a BCBA, but they are a contracted position for which we have about $50,000 in the budget annually for that position. That position is by no means a full-time position. Okay, and in fact, right now we're only finding really a few hours a week because it's hard to find one right now. We did have one that was almost full-time. However, that person left the company that they were working with and is now employed by another local school district. Okay. These numbers here also represent the elimination of all the ESSER-funded paraeducator positions. So years ago, we committed to you that this is the first group that we would look at to kind of fade out of ESSER funding, and we were able to do that successfully through attrition over the years. However, we are recommending that we keep the English language department program paraeducator, again, because of the need and the growth of our multilingual students within Northern Lehigh School District. So we are recommending that we do actually retain that position, the paraeducator position, which will become part of our general operating budget. This also represents the addition of, now follow me on this, 3 new additional paraeducator positions at no additional cost to the district due to the elimination of a contracted BCBA position and savings from known retirements. So even though it says we're going down 2 support staff positions, that's accurate, but when you consider the paraeducator positions through ESSERs that we've been funding, we're actually saying that we can add 3 positions back into the budget, but it's going to be cost neutral. And you'll see how we get there over the next couple slides. Next slide, please. So here are our positions currently funded through ESSER money. 2 PES paraeducators, we're recommending that those positions be eliminated through attrition. Same for SES. And then 1 paraeducator at the middle school being eliminated through attrition. Let me put out here now that this does not mean that any of our current employees are losing their jobs. It means either those positions have faded out and they have not been refilled, or the people that we would have could potentially shift into some of the other positions that we have available. And this, oh, by the way, this presentation will be posted publicly tomorrow on the website. Next, we have, we're again recommending that we keep 1 district-wide ELDP paraeducator. We're recommending to retain them. That's the person to help support our multi-language learners. We also have a PES classroom teacher position funded through ESSER. We are recommending to retain that position as well. A district-wide technology integration specialist, we are recommending to retain that position. And 1 administrator, the director of educational technology curriculum instruction, we are recommending to retain. We strongly and firmly believe that those 4 positions that we are recommending retaining are mission critical to the work that we're doing here in the school district. Comes at a cost of $474,000. That's an estimate because we're not quite sure where the insurance premiums are going to kind of work out going into the new school year. The ESSER funding expires, as mentioned earlier, in September of 2024. Next slide, please.
So this slide just basically shows where our expenditures and revenues have been over the last few years. And if you look at the most recent year that was just completed in June of 2023, we had expenditures of 37.9, almost 38 million, and we did have revenues in 39.3 million. So we did put $1.5 million into fund balance again this year. But I'm going to talk about some ideas of some stuff that I want to recommend to the board that we do with some of these. The last couple of years, we haven't made bond payments and we have increased our fund balance. But knowing that that was the reason why a lot of those increases happened, I have stuff in fund balance I want to talk to you about. But again, we agreed not to raise our adjusted index over that 7.1%, which was approved at that Act 1 resolution in December. And again, we didn't apply for any exceptions for special education or PSER, so that's the highest we could go if you would choose to go that high. Next slide, Stephen. This just shows where our fund balance is. So again, we started out, if you look back as far as 2016, we're at like 11.7, almost 12 million dumps during those like COVID years, and then it started to climb. And again, a lot of that was due to the fact that we did not pay our bond payments. We kind of took a freeze on some of them, and we have grown it to 16.05. Again, that looks like a lot, but I'm going to show you when we get to the fund balance slide what we want to do with that. Go ahead, Stephen.
Okay, now we're going to talk about some specific building level recommendations, mostly related to staffing. So for Peters Elementary School, we're recommending to transfer a first grade teaching position to a second grade teaching position due to class size. This position, or a position, has kind of tracked with last year's kindergarten class into first grade, and we're recommending that teacher go into second grade next year. We are also recommending the addition of a special education teacher due to caseloads and student needs. This would be done by repurposing a vacant position due to a retirement at no additional cost. You'll see how this shakes out over the next couple slides. We're also recommending an additional classroom teacher position by repurposing an existing position in the district. So we have a position in the district that we're going to recommend go to Peters Elementary School. We also have a recommendation to add a paraeducator position funded through saving by the eliminating a contract at BCBA and saving of teacher retirements. So previously I had mentioned that if we eliminate the money we have for a contract at BCBA, which is approximately $50,000, plus savings through teachers' retirements, that we would add 3 paraeducator positions. We would like one of those paraeducators to go to Peters Elementary School to provide targeted support out there. And then potentially for Peters Elementary School, a building budget increase for sustainability of programs and materials. This budget has not been increased for at least 10 years, most likely longer. Our fiscal software only goes back 10 years. We hope to identify this amount by our April presentation. Okay, next slide, please. For Slatington Elementary School, replace a vacant interventionist gifted position triggered by a retirement by repurposing another available position at no additional cost. Savings from a vacant intervention, and then that savings, so the current interventionist gifted position, that position is going to be vacant due to a retirement. We're recommending to transfer a position from another building to fill that position. And then the savings from that position, we're recommending that instead of having it go back into an interventionist or gifted position, that position actually become a district employed directly BCBA position to support children in their behavioral needs K-12. Okay. This will eliminate expenditure of the contracted BCBA position as well. So again, we are seeing behaviors throughout the district, mostly right now at the primary grade levels, but concerns K-12 that we feel that a district employed BCBA would be money well invested to better support our students and to provide support to our staff trying to support those students. We realize now that when we do it through a contracted position that we always run the risk of that teacher, that person, being picked up full-time by another district, which is what happened to us earlier in the school year. We're also recommending through the savings of eliminating a contracted BCBA position and retirements, that we add 2 paraeducator positions to Slatington Elementary School to focus primarily on literacy and numeracy intervention, working with next year's teacher interventionists. Okay, so there would be 4 of them, 2 teachers, 2 support staff members, 2 paraeducators, with their primary focus delivering interventions for numeracy and literacy. So that averages out to a position per grade level, not necessarily always assigned to the same grade level. Again, Slatington's elementary school, we're going to recommend an increase to their building level budget for sustainability of programs. Again, you'll see a trend here. None of the building budgets have been increased for at least the last 10 years. Okay. Next slide, please. At the middle school, we are recommending to repurpose a teacher position to Slatington Elementary School to fill the interventionist gifted teacher vacancy. We are recommending to repurpose a teacher position to Peters Elementary School to address classroom size issues. So that's one of those positions on the very first building level slide. And then to restructure a vacant retiree position to address needs at multiple building levels. We're still working out specifically what those are, but it's most likely going to deal with things like interventionists, gifted education, intervention, extension, and gifted education. But that person could potentially provide support K to 12. And then again, a potential building budget increase for sustainability of programs and materials. Okay, next slide, please. At the high school, we're recommending to replace a chemistry teacher that's going to be triggered due to a retirement. That is a science position, subject area, content area that we have to have somebody certified in chemistry to teach. And then repurpose another science teacher vacancy due to retirement to PES as the new special education position, which I laid out in the first building level slide. And then again, a potential building budget increase for sustainability of programs and materials. Okay, so a lot of moving parts there. We will be able to bring back, continue to refine those recommendations as we go through the next several iterations of this presentation over the next couple months. But right now, that's the framework that administration is working under to address student needs in the greatest areas throughout the district, working with the resources that we currently have available. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay. I'd like to kind of revisit, every year I'd like to revisit the impact on charter schools on our budgetary planning. So here again, there's a multi-year look back. The last 2 kind of series towards the right there are the current year, then what we're projecting for next year. Overall, you'll see that we're looking at a slight decrease in what we're projecting for students enrolled in either brick and mortar charter schools or cyber charter schools. The biggest decrease in the cyber area, going from we're projecting currently 75 down to 68, and then we're looking at an increase of 2 for the brick and mortars. Next slide, please. So our yearly cost, and now this slide here is broken out by total costs. That's the blue line. We're looking at about 2.03 million. Was what we're projecting for next year. The red line is students with disability. The red line is students in charter schools, whether they're cyber or brick and mortar, that are regular education students. And then the green line is for students in brick and mortar or cyber, which are students with disabilities. So even though we're projecting a slight decrease in the number of students in charter schools next year, we're also projecting simultaneously that the cost is going to rise. And that's because every year those calculations under the current formula are based on like our current expenditure model. Okay. Right now, this year, a student that is regular education attending a charter school, whatever model it is costs $14,398. That's the money that follows that student out to the charter. A student with special needs who attends some type of charter school, that cost is $35,477. This is why it's so important that we all collectively continue to advocate for legislation like House Bill 1422, which puts a cap on cyber school costs, a flat cap at $8,000 per student. For Northern Lehigh School District, that would save us annually over $400,000, almost $450,000 a year is what that would save us. So please make sure that you share that information with your neighbors and your community members when it comes to advocating for revised funding systems for especially cyber charter schools. Okay. Next slide, please. So what this looks like, again, for costs, just kind of breaking it out a little bit further for brick and mortar versus cyber charter school. For brick and mortar, or for cyber next year, we're anticipating $1.33 million, and for brick and mortar, we're anticipating about $700,000. Okay. Next slide, please.
So this is the projected 24-25 budget revenue streams. So our real estate tax collection rate is increasing it this year to 94.5%. We have been pretty steady, being a little bit slightly over that. I feel comfortable increasing it to 94.5% for the 24-25 school year. If we were to raise taxes to our maximum, we could have an additional $1.5 million in revenue. I just wanted you to see that that's what that kind of a percentage of increase could do for us.
That's ridiculous.
Federal revenues budgeted at 23-24 amounts, again, because our federal revenues really do not increase much. It's very slight, maybe a couple $1,000s here and there. So we budget them normally pretty much to what they were at the year before. State revenues, again, we have no idea what's going to happen with that governor's budget. Dr. Lincoln and I talk every day on how it's crickets at the state level on what is happening with the state budget. It's nobody knows anything. So currently, what the governor has budgeted and shown for Northern Lehigh, we would be looking at $765 additional in basic ed funding. Special education, we're looking at $52,000 increase. And then that school mental health grant we just applied for, that will take effect as of August 1st of 24, and it'll go till June 30th of 26. That is guaranteed monies. That's monies that's already in this past year's budget and everybody gets. The money we are going to use our district for a contracted social worker and a contracted psychologist to help our school psychologists with their evaluations and stuff that they are kind of a little bit pressured under. So we want to give them a little bit of help through this grant. And then of course we have that Ready to Learn block grant that has been flat funded for many years, and it continues to be there, and we continue to get like $298,000 a year for that. Ready to Learn block grant that actually funds 3 of our elementary school teachers. We use to fund them. Next slide, Stephen. So I talked earlier about current fund balance and where we stand. So this is where we are as of June 30th of 2023. This was the board motion that we approved a couple months ago, and setting those committed and assigned fund balances. Total committed is $2.3 million. Again, we still have 1.8 in that PSERS. If that PSERS rate starts to increase, we're probably going to start using some of this money to offset those increased costs. Assigned fund balance, that yellow highlighted line, is 1.1 million. That's how much we were short in our expenditures versus revenues for this school year. So if we happen to use and expend everything, we would be using 1.116 out of fund balance. I'm going to draw your attention to the future debt service payment line. There's $2.6 million in there. That's the money that I had earmarked in there to be used for future debt service payments. So what I kind of did is I looked out and I saw we have 13 years to pay back our debt service payments. I would recommend that if the board is in agreement, that we turn around and say, I'm gonna take that 2.6 million and I'm gonna divide that out over 13 years, and how much money I wanna take out of fund balance every single year to alleviate some of our debt bond payment, because this money should have been used for bond payments. So let's use it and take that money out of our budget every year using this fund balance. So basically, although it looks like we have a 16.047 fund balance, if we're gonna use 2.6 to offset those debt service payments, you're really down to like 14 million, where we've been the last couple of years.
Would we get any savings in interest if we put that full amount, like like the 2,600 instead of dividing it? Will we save interest if we did that?
Oh, on the bond payments?
Yeah.
No, because I'm not making $200,000 additional in payments. I'm still making the same amount of payments. It's $2 million in our budget that I would be paying. I'm only going to say 180 or 1.8 million is coming out of taxpayers' money, and the other 200,000 is going to come out of this.
Okay.
So it's not like we're making like a mortgage payment. You're going to make double payments and to save on interest. That's not what I'm recommending. I'm recommending just using this to offset the amount of the payment that we would be making by $200,000.
So we wouldn't save anything by paying it off all
Correct.
That's what I
That's what I thought you were trying to
That's
get
what I
at.
was trying to say, you know.
Yeah.
By paying the 2.6. Yeah.
Okay, you're playing the shell game.
Right, exactly. Keep in mind though that a lot of this money, I want to say probably about 10 or 12 million of it, is in our money at Pisloff, which we are earning a little over 5% interest on right now. So we are seeing my interest that we used to only get a couple years ago, $30,000 and $40,000. We're up into the $300,000 and $400,000 on earning interest on this money. So the money is helping us with earning interest, so which helps offset the expenses, some of the other expenses that we have coming through. So. And then really quickly, because I know this is going, and just in relationship to that, when we talk about the baseball softball field, we originally put $2.7 million into Pisloff in order to, for the bond that we got. In investing that, we have paid expenses so far at $116,000. We have earned interest at $131,000, so we still have $2,022,000. So we have more money sitting in that account right now than what was originally put in there because of the interest we've been earning on that money as well. So, next slide, Stephen.
Okay, the next couple slides is where we talk about what are some of the, larger projects or purchases that we would want to make over like the next 5 to 8 years. So in years past, there was maybe, we actually did a very nice job of eliminating about 8 or 9 projects over like the past 3 or 4 years. So I didn't even list those anymore because the list was just becoming too long. So kind of starting anew with this upcoming school year, we do have the baseball, softball fields on there. 2.17 is what we're currently projecting, and that would be funded through the bond proceeds, which is what Mrs. Maltors was just talking about. We would also like this upcoming year to purchase a zero-turn lawnmower, which we're estimating at about $15,000 for the type that we want to get. However, Mr. Mann in his due diligence has been researching. We currently have a very large John Deere tractor, which is good for like fields down where the football, baseball currently is, some of the other fields that, we kind of use it in around the perimeter edge of the properties across the street. But once those fences go up on the new softball, baseball complex, that piece of equipment's actually going to be too large to maneuver in there. So what we're recommending is that we're looking to trade in that tractor. This is a very rough estimate, but what we're finding online is for that type of tractor with the number of hours that are currently on it, we could potentially be looking at about a $40,000 trade-in. Use that to fund, and we're refining that. Chris is working now, I forget the company that we work with.
Hilltop Sales.
Hilltop, to see, actually somebody come in directly and evaluate it with us. So that money to go towards the purchase of the zero-turn lawnmower. We're also looking at, on the last school board agenda, the district-wide wireless upgrade, and the next item, the firewalls, have been approved. Please keep in mind that those were coupled with the E-rate funding, right? So the actual cost to the district, if we receive the E-rate funds, would be a little over $56,000 for the wireless upgrades, and then the firewall is $53,000. That money is already marked in the technology fund balance. Okay, so the only way I would see that not happening is if we don't get any sort of E-rate, which we traditionally get E-rate. But I just need to put that qualifier out there. The next one is something that I brought up a few months ago called the feasibility study and mentioned most recently in my most recent board update. This would be to help us not only kind of plan things like we're talking about right now, but really look at a long-term study on projected enrollment trends, as well as, you'll see in the next slide, some building issues, or some building decisions we're going to have to make. I don't yet have a number for that. However, late tomorrow morning, Dr. Stoker and I are meeting with a firm that specializes in feasibility studies. It is a very informal conversation. It's actually more of a learning opportunity for us as an administrative members to then come back and better inform the school board in upcoming budget presentations. If we were to move forward with the feasibility study, it's likely, not guaranteed, but likely required that we would have to go out for an RFP for firms to conduct a feasibility study. More to come on that. Northern Lehigh High School auditorium sound system, this is something that we've been talking about over the last year. Currently estimating this to be at about $75,000. Here we're recommending if we have money left over at the end of this year's budget, and then potentially a combination of fund balance as well. Once we have that project firmed up, we'll come back to you with a strong recommendation. Northern Lehigh High School lunch and learn furniture. We know from our visits down at CB East that they had to repurpose existing furniture, but then also purchase furniture to fill out the areas throughout the building where students interact, have lunch, because it's more than just a cafeteria. Their school district, the first year, spent $35,000. The next year, $35,000. And I think the most recent year, $35,000. Our school building could fit into almost like a wing of their high school. Okay, we don't need that much furniture. However, we do need some seed money to get this up and running. We're recommending about $15,000 that if we move forward to this model next school year, that we can start repurposing some of the existing furniture that we have, but also purchasing some new flexible furniture to put around the school building. Again, we would look to see if there's monies left over at the end of this year's budget cycle and potentially fund balance. A maintenance truck with a utility box, although as recently as this afternoon, this may morph into a maintenance truck with a much smaller toolbox and a lift gate. So not a full kind of Reading utility box that you see on some work vehicles. Here we're looking at about $45,000. We would look to repurpose money from a potential tractor trade-in and then money from the maintenance budget as well. Public announcement system for the baseball softball field. So not this upcoming year, but the year after that project is completed. About $10,000 for a system to cover both fields and spectator areas, and as well as security cameras to do the same at about $32,000. This is kind of a work in progress yet, and we have not yet dedicated where the funding stream for this would be. However, we do want some sort of sound system in there, not just a little speaker box with a microphone, but something that the players, the teams, and the spectators can actually hear. And then also, if we're going to put those utility buildings in, but also for cameras pointed towards the field as well, security cameras, which would require the cameras themselves, fiber cables. Help me out here, Eric.
Yep.
Yes, those, and the conduits and stuff that go with that. Again,
Question on the
sure.
baseball softball is we're doing that with the cameras. Will that also include cameras similar to like the NFHS streamed
Yes,
cameras?
yeah, we would, that's part of
Is that,
the
I didn't know if that was
Well,
part of that, or is that an additional?
That's not part of it. I
That's
have
not-
that built in, I have that built into the athletic budget.
And with our friends at St. Luke's University Health Network, we can sometimes be able to negotiate that number down.
So yes, we're planning on it, but it's not included in that part.
Thank you, just clarification, appreciate it.
It's a good question. Peter's gym wall.
It's back.
It's back. However, we're keeping it there because we don't want to forget about it. Okay, so we are again having the company come out to evaluate and make a recommendation to us, just like they did last year. We're expecting that they're going to say you can absolutely get another year out of it, but we do want to keep it there, kind of front of mind for everyone as we're making these decisions. So yes, it's back. Okay, the next item that you're going to see here is new. And this is something that we've been quietly working on over, I'm going to say about the last 2 weeks or so, maybe a little bit longer. Mr. Mann has been taking the lead on this. There is a public schools facility improvement grant that has been recently released out there. It's for a minimum of $500,000. It can go much higher, but whatever number you receive, the district has to match 25% of it.
That's it?
Yes.
Crystal clear.
So,
What criteria is it?
many. So it has to be dedicated towards facility improvements, specifically for things like air quality, asbestos, things like that. So what we're proposing is new flooring at the high school for areas not touched by the recent renovation. And here's why. Because we know that under those floors, the adhesive that they use is asbestos. So it's okay as long as we do nothing, right? As long as we don't disturb it, it's okay. But if we ever want to replace it, the asbestos monitoring and mitigation costs could equal or best the amount for the actual materials of the new tiles and installation. So it's very, very cost prohibitive unless we were to do it through a grant opportunity like this. We do not have a number on this yet. We're talking about thousands and thousands of square footage of tile. Okay, so again, Mr. Mann is trying to figure out what that cost would be. We do know that the grant will allow us to address the mitigation cost of the asbestos, but we also recently learned within like the last 48 hours that we can also use that money to pay for the new materials and the installation of the new materials. So this is a project that is much more feasible now, but it would still come with a price tag to the district directly. Okay.
What do you think the chances are?
Of us receiving the grant, I'm very hopeful.
That's an administrator for you.
The individual that I spoke to, she didn't give me any inclination that we wouldn't even be in the running. The items that I was coming up with and the questions she was straightforward with, I didn't get anything back from her saying don't waste your time. According from what the voices, just the way her tone to me was that if she was us, she'd continue. So I'm very hopeful. The only thing is, like we had said, it's at a minimum of $500,000. We don't know what it's gonna cost until we get those exact numbers. Couldn't tell you.
I love the list of the long-term projects. Is there any discussion or thought on some building improvements? For instance, the main floor bathrooms in the high school for when our sports teams are bringing in other teams, and repairing those bathrooms, for instance, or even the ones down in the cafeteria that I think still have the toilets when I went to school. So as we start to look at that, love all the stuff here. Fantastic. I think we're starting to get into when are we going to start seeing some additional improvements to some areas that are community facing or that we can utilize for that I think we might be missing the boat a little bit on.
Sure, so that's a great question. I do remember you bringing that up probably a couple months ago. So the answer to that is yes. But part of that is through a feasibility study to see what kind of, almost purchasing power could we leverage if we were to do it, say, all the bathrooms, something like that, for them to come back and make recommendations. Or what are your long-term bathroom needs based on enrollment trends? So we want to have literally experts come in and hopefully make some recommendations to us. There are some smaller things that our crew could probably do internally, but as far as a full scale, everything from the aesthetics of certain areas, internal, inside and outside of our buildings, but also the functionality of those places as well, that would all be part of the feasibility study.
Thank you for looking into it. I appreciate it. I think it needs to happen. I think we have to start planning for some of that stuff. To Mr. Kern, I think we made the first step by putting an electronic board out front. But just those little things that as we're going to other districts and we're seeing some of this stuff.
We can put some improvements to it.
Well, I would suggest along with that feasibility study, if that's the direction we go, and just looking at the bathroom situation, that we look at some future trends that are occurring in America as far as male, female, gender neutral, all of that. So along with doing what we need to do with our current bathroom situation, we certainly need to look
Absolutely.
at future considerations.
Agreed.
So yes, so excuse me, more to come on that.
Thank you.
Kind of next slide, please, Mr. Hawes. So we also know that all 4 buildings are going to need a significant furniture updating as well. And we've really been kicking these down the road. However, we're starting to firm this up, saying, high school, we're estimating about $300,000, the middle school about $100,000. Again, they only have 2 grades, and they've, most recently upgraded the essential skills library area with flexible seating.
Wonderful.
A lot of good feedback on that. And also, I just want to float out there real quick since you brought it up. I'm getting a lot of positive feedback about the digital marquee. Okay, and I'm sure that I'm also sure it would look.
You can read it.
Yeah. You can't read it?
You can read it.
Oh, you can read it.
As opposed to going by and being like, what does that say? You definitely can read it.
And
As a person who used to change those letters, I'm sure the person that was required to do it this time is very happy.
Yes,
and I'm sure it would look equally as well out on Frieden's Road. Okay, next slide. No, this slide. So, Northern Lehigh High School furniture replacement. You can see the rollout of the furniture replacement recommendations there. School furniture is not cheap, especially if we want to move away from the traditional fixed seat to desk type model. And then we have some things that come up every few years, and our school district actually has been doing a really good job with keeping our parking lots, the sealed, fixing the cracks, and then the line painting. Chillers at the middle school, this would also be part of a feasibility study, but this is something that has been up there for a while, and right now, Mr. Mann and Mr. Stevens, our HVAC technician, we're going to bring back in probably McClure, who's most recently done our work and has been the ones that installed a number of these parts of this equipment, to give us a useful life on our current high school chiller. The GEL, raise your hand if you know what a GEL is. Okay, the GEL is the piece of equipment that we have, which is like a Bobcat. Okay, I didn't know what a GEL was when I started here either. So that is something that, again, probably in about 5 years out, we may be looking at about a $40,000 replacement. Our team has done a really good job of keeping that well maintained and bringing in service technicians when we need to. Okay, the tennis court resurfacing or the repurposing project. This is big because it may have to be a complete tear out and redo. I am not personally recommending at this time that we return them to tennis courts. I would look more towards like a multi-purpose net sport, pickleball, maybe a basketball hoop, stuff like that. I would even go as far as recommending something that a lot of more and more school districts are doing locally to support students with special needs, to include students with special needs in these type of activities, and that would be a unified bocce course. So that is something where any student can really play, even if they do have some sort of physical handicap or something like that. There's pretty good square footage down there. I think there's a way we could turn it into a multi-purpose type of thing. I am also really looking into to see if this is something that we could couple with a potential capital campaign. I've had some significant donors reach out to me and express interest in doing something with that space down there. However, I think it would have to be coupled with an actual capital campaign to pull it off, which may require some district matching funds. So just know that we're working on that. And then again, the large utility shed. This is something that we do not want to forget about. This is the pole building that's on the other side of the parking lot out front here. But right now, we're hoping that we can get another 5 to 6 years out of that. We realized that we wanted to prioritize some other things with our bond work before that building. Okay. Next slide, please. Thank you, Mr. Hawes. Again, this is where, I had floated this slide out probably back in the summer about the middle school facility in particular. And this is going to be part of that feasibility study. What do we want to do about enrollment trends? Does it make sense to move 6th grade to the middle school and make it a traditional middle school model of 6, 7, 8? And if so, does that require for us to renovate the interior and exterior, renovate the interior and exterior with an addition, or would we want to consider new construction? I do not have answers for any of those right now. That would be something that I would ask a feasibility study, whoever the firm is, to do it, to take a very close look at enrollment trends and then also our middle school building itself. And that concludes our proposed preliminary budget presentation for this evening. So a lot to think about. No action, of course, needs to be taken this evening. This is something that's going to continue to go back to you monthly as we go through the March board meeting and then April and May and potentially into June. We are required to pass our budget by the end of June. So is the state. However, for some reason, the state does not do that all the time. So we are required no matter what.
Well, I'm hopeful that we do get some of that increased funding that they have referenced. I mean, that would be major for us. It would just help so much to do. And I'd really, like to use that versus taxpayers as much as possible.
I agree, Mrs. Cole. Especially if they could do something with, and I know I keep bringing it up, but to me, it is the closest thing to a silver bullet we'll ever see, and that's how charter schools are funded in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, that would make a heck of a difference for districts like us.
One question on staffing.
Yes.
With the increased student population, do we believe, based on what you presented, that we have enough staff that our student to teacher ratio, for instance, is where we want it to be?
I would like to see that ratio decrease in our primary buildings, which is why we're looking to add another regular education classroom teacher and a special education classroom teacher. And then we will need to continue to track that and make decisions each year.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah, just hearing some of the things going on at our lower schools, just maybe smaller class sizes. And if that happens to come up now, I think it's something we have to look at to make sure that we can get to all of our students and we can do all of that where we're working on that. So thanks for looking at it.
Sure. Aside from that, aside from the actual buildings, I also think that our enrollment numbers are going to continue to rise due to, right now, this area, this northern tier of Lehigh County is where the affordable housing is for many young families. And, we see it out here in the neighborhood next door and the neighborhood across from the middle school, that when a house goes on the market, it goes just like that And the families that are buying it either already have school-age children or they have children that are like pre-kindergarten. And that's just, you know, that's where the affordable housing is for, I mean, I couldn't,
I remember.
being a new homeowner, there's no way,
Yep.
you know,
Oh.
with the housing market right now, what it is, you know.
I still remember when they told us our enrollment would decrease. Matt, you remember that? They kept saying, oh yeah, our enrollment will keep decreasing at Northern Lehigh. And they were proving them wrong.
You know, and then the other helpful thing is it's nice that we're starting to see some of our students return from the charters and cyber charters and less going. So, okay, that's all we had for finance this evening. Mrs. Culp.
I'd like to turn it over to. Oh, turn the page. Oh, I'm sorry.
Snyder. Calling at me.
Yeah, that's who I was looking to. Yeah,
Alright.
I was looking for the name.
As she closes out that, we're going to open up the extra and co-curricular committee meeting. And
So first, I would like to remind everyone that next week begins our spring musical. I'm really excited to see the Footloose spring musical. Not ashamed to admit it was one of my favorite movies growing up. So I'm happy to see it here in our auditorium. It is Footloose. That'll be March 14th, 15th, 16th, and the 17th. I was looking at the ticketing purchasing site today. If you have not purchased your ticket already, I highly encourage you to do it now. There may not be any available at the door by the time these shows start, which is awesome to see the amount of family members and community members that want to go see this performance. Adult tickets are $15. Student and senior citizens are $12. And again, you can visit the Northern Lehigh School District website to order the tickets. Okay. And again, our new ticketing purchasing software has been, I think, a huge part of that. It's so easy to do. I'm going to ask our athletic director, Mr. Geis, to give an update on our debrief, rather, on winter sports.
Yep, we just had awards night tonight. Apologize for being a little late, but we had our awards night tonight. We honored our boys basketball, girls basketball, wrestling, and cheerleaders tonight. And we had some major outstanding award winners. Aubrey Pollard and Caitlin Barthold were outstanding girls basketball. Connor Sims and Nick Buzzkirk were our boys basketball outstanding basketball players, and our outstanding wrestler was Sam Frame. He had finished fourth in districts, and he was 8th in the Southeast Regionals. Our wrestling team is now back. We filled all of our weight classes going into districts. We got back to a 500 record, so that program continues to rise. It's looking forward to a lot of good things. First year head coach in boys basketball, Bob Failer. We doubled our wins from last year. I'll leave it at that. We doubled our wins. So, girls basketball, unfortunately, we did not win a district title. We did finish second. We earned silver medals Friday night at Martz Hall. That also qualified us for the state tournament. We play this Friday at Archbishop Wood against a team out of District 12, which is the city of Philadelphia. It's called Mass Charter the second. I don't know, we'll see.
I have to say, NFHS worked. It was fantastic. So I was able to watch a little bit of the wrestling and the girls' basketball team, and it was fantastic to see the support of our community at those events, the pride that the boys and girls showed at those events, and just the success of our student athletes as they're really coming out of some really tough times through. So thanks to you guys who are kind of promoting the sports, the athletics, seeing it on the music side and the production side. It's been really exciting to see the pride coming back. So thanks for taking some time to really put some emphasis on it.
yeah, I have to agree with
Our
that.
numbers are really bouncing back for participation numbers. So we're seeing a lot of student athletes coming back and really filling our.
And I did watch some of the boys basketball, and it was nice to see them playing, and they did play with heart.
And we
Some younger kids coming up.
Yeah,
so.
we only had one senior, one junior on that boys basketball
Yeah.
team, so it was very underclassmen laden put it that way.
Yep.
So, other than that, that's our winter sports, if anybody has any
Just like to
questions.
quickly comment, the girls' district championship game at Mart's Hall, I kind of hung in it back by our student section. I want to compliment our student section that was there. They were very supportive of our girls, and they did it in a very appropriate way for a high school student section. I was really proud of them, of how they supported our team in a way that's appropriate for a public setting like that.
Yeah.
So it was nice
Yeah.
to see. And there was a lot of them that made the trip up to Pottsville for the game.
Yeah, and echo, a lot of those girls support our boys soccer and our football teams in the fall. So it's neat seeing that camaraderie and support either way for all those different teams. So that's pretty cool. Anything else, winter sports?
And don't overlook the fact that it's not only sports. I mean, it seems like every other month we're creating a new club of some sort, and people are turning out for a lot of those things also.
Yeah.
So.
There might be a new guitar club. We had about
There you
13,
go. See? Yeah,
13
I like
kids
that.
jamming with Mr. Bennett the other day, so.
And that also includes
Watch out
all
for
the-
that.
That
I like
also
the visual.
includes
That was
all of
pretty
our
good.
students who are not in a sport but attend our weight room. We also have a lot of our students go to the weight room in the wintertime. So we,
That's rewarding to hear that.
yes.
Hey, Mike, I may have my son's electric guitar he made in class.
He doesn't use, it may come
Mr.
back.
Bennett has a couple that he made on display down there, and the kids love it. So.
It is nice to see also staff and community sharing what our students are doing. Ms. Crucial, I'm gonna call you out on this one. The girls' field hockey team did an indoor tournament, and watching those girls who had a really, really tough season in the fall, to say the least, had a win, 2 ties, scored 10 goals, things that they haven't done in a really long time, and just to see the team camaraderie. Thank you for doing it. Thank you for spending the day on a Sunday doing that. Seeing so many of our staff out there supporting our students, that's what it's about. That's where you get the accountability. That's where you get the collaboration. That's where you get the buy-in from our students, and they're really taking it to the next level. So I appreciate the administration pushing that, the community doing it, and it's showing. It really is. It's showing the pride of our students out there. So thank you.
All right, pole vault pit. The pole vault pit was purchased while I was the head track coach, the current pole vault pit. So that was.
1942?
Yeah. It shows it's, we're getting a lot of dry rotting. So, I mean, they normally have like 8 to 10 year warranty on them. So they're foam, like that's what we're looking at. So I talked to Sherry and asked like if this is a possibility, if we could look to replace that and funding source, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sherry, but there is some money allocated that we could replace this through a purchase, since it's bid board, and I'm not really familiar with bid board. Co-stars, yes, but not bid board. Or buy board, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. So, the money, Brian has every year in his budget money put aside for weight room upgrades. So if a treadmill goes down, or a bike goes down, or a weight lift, we didn't want to have where all that machine is breaking down years after years, Band-Aiding it, and then it's an $800,000 project when we have to redo it. So he has that money in his budget. There was no need for any kind of new equipment this year, so he still has like $36,000 in his budget for new equipment stuff. So that's where we're saying that money is in his budget for that pit. Buy board, I learned, is much like CoStars, but it's actually a national bid program. So it actually is a true bid, where CoStars is only a Pennsylvania thing. Buy board is a national program. So we as a district have to join Buy board in order to be able to purchase this. It's free of charge. It doesn't cost us anything. I just need board motion on Monday night to say, yeah, we want to be partners in Buy board. And then we just are listed on Buy board as being able to purchase and buy stuff from them.
The good news is that these pits are manufactured here in Pennsylvania. They didn't give me a town or wherever it is, 4 to 6 week production, but at least it's Pennsylvania manufactured, so the money's going right back to the
You
state.
need a motion to join that?
Yeah, that'll be on Monday night. It'll be a
And you need a
motion.
motion also to buy the pit because the money
Yep.
is there, you still need a motion? Okay.
Yep.
And we have the quote, I don't have the number,
Yeah,
but
I
it's
have the
around,
quote. 19,000?
no, more than that, but yeah, I want to say
Okay.
it's just under that. I think that includes the
Oh.
pieces of the pit, so you're looking at, the one that we have has 5 huge foam pads underneath, and then what we call a cleat pad that runs on top of that, plus a weather cover that goes on top of that. I don't know what the square footage would be, or cubic foot, it's pole, but it's standard.
The
so
quote
it's
here
big.
is 19,075.
Okay.
And that's all inclusive of
Yeah,
everything
with
Mr.
it.
Dice just listed? Okay.
Yeah.
Good. So I'm hearing support for that item being placed on the March agenda? Okay. That's all we have.
Wednesday, March 20th, coffee and conversation, 6 PM, all are welcome. Wednesday, March the 20th at 6 PM.
The only other thing that I'll mention is in 2 weeks from today, we're gonna be having our National Letter of Intent press conference in the high school at 2:30. We have about a dozen students who are gonna be participating in sports on the next level. We have 1 Division II athlete and I believe 11 or 12 Division III athletes in various sports. So that'll be in about 2 weeks in our auditorium at 2:30.
Awesome, good. How'd spring sports start? How'd they start?
Everything was good. Paperwork's a go.
Fantastic.
Starting with the winter award ceremony. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.